Imagine this, you're dropped into a world like GTA, but instead of being the main character, you're just an NPC, an overlooked side character no one cares about. That's Kim Ha-jun's reality, author's worst nightmare, trapped in his own novel with no escape. But interestingly, Kim is the creator of this very story, the same world he's now trapped in. At first, everything about this tale seemed typical. Like many other stories, dungeons and monsters appeared all over the planet, throwing everything into chaos. Humanity was pushed to the brink of destruction. Korea became one of the worst places to live on Earth. But as always, there were champions with extraordinary powers who began defeating the creatures and clearing out the dungeons. Hero organizations formed, and thanks to their efforts, Korea transformed into one of the most thriving nations. To train the greatest heroes, an academy called the Cube was established. In this tale, there was a central protagonist and his rival, but our hero was neither of them. Upon arriving in this world, the author seemed to develop an unusual ability. He could clearly hear what people in the crowd were saying about Kim Soo-ho's growing reputation. Some spoke highly of Soo-ho, while others didn't, but their words were what concerned our protagonist. What surprised him was being able to hear every single voice, even though he sat far from the crowd. When Kim Soo-ho's remarkable achievements were brought up, the Cube's headmaster was amazed. She was even more impressed by Soo-ho's age, as he had managed to achieve so much by the age of 17. The name Kim Soo-ho echoed in the writer's mind. Soo-ho was supposed to be the main hero of the story, the one destined to lead this broken world into an age of peace and order. Being the classic typical hero, Soo-ho possessed both the kindness of a savior and a strong determination for what was right. What intrigued the author even more was the fact that Soo-ho had a deep secret, one he was protecting at all costs. But putting that aside, the writer's attention shifted to Soo-ho's rival, the one meant to challenge him in the story and create conflict. This adversary entered the scene as the second-best cadet, Shin Jung-hak. He's a confident, perhaps even overly proud, individual. He fit the mold of a privileged rich kid, as his father owned one of the top companies in the nation. The writer noted that Jung-hak's abilities could pose a real threat to Soo-ho, especially since Jung-hak would eventually become a villain. At this stage, all these key characters were still just trainees, but soon, Jung-hak's constant comparisons to Soo-ho and his feelings of inferiority would lead him down a dark path. In the future, Jung-hak would embrace his role as the villain, opposing Soo-ho in an effort to surpass him. Like two sides of the same coin, representing light and darkness, Soo-ho and Jung-hak would clash in the days ahead, though for now, they stood as equals. Both main characters were right in front of the author's eyes. Once again, he was sure this was the world he had written about. This raised an important question. If Soo-ho and Jung-hak were the stars of the story, what role did the author himself have to play? Was he significant in any way? He thought that if he were living inside his own novel, he should at least have a proper name. His thoughts were interrupted when another student addressed him as Chun-dan and asked if he'd gotten any sleep. The author, now overwhelmed with a million questions, he asked the chubby guy, "Who's Chun-dan?" The chubby guy replied, "You're Chun-dan. Who else would I be talking about?" This revealed that his NPC name is Kim Chun-dan. He had hoped to be someone important or at least have a noteworthy role, as is common in transmigration stories. But this Chun-dan fellow was so random that even the author didn't remember writing him into the story. Hoping for some clarity, the author thought that maybe looking at his reflection would jog his memory. But the biggest mystery was this: who was Chun-dan supposed to be? The funniest part of this bizarre situation came when the author realized that his face was completely blank, like a question mark. It was as if he wasn't important enough for the world to even give him a proper appearance. Faced with this strange reality, the author was stunned. As he tried to process the situation, it hit him. There was something incredibly humbling about discovering your face was literally a blank slate. But here's the thing, Chun-dan wasn't even a character the author had planned to include in the story. He had no defining traits, no unique identity, and no meaningful place in the world he himself had created. The writer sinks into despair as he realizes that even the people around him are ignoring his blank, featureless face. It's as if he's a GTA NPC, a nobody who doesn't matter. Inside the cube, he's the most average person and will probably never cross paths with the main characters or change their fates. If you've ever felt like you weren't the lead character in your own life, think about this guy's situation. He's not just a side character, he's barely even that, just a placeholder filling a spot in the story. Feeling crushed, the writer shrinks into himself, understanding he's nothing more than an unimportant extra in his own tale. Now, let's rewind a little to figure out how he ended up in this mess. One day, the author received an unexpected email offering to remake his novel, The Returned Hero. This fantasy story, written by Kim Ha-jun, had been abandoned for over 6 months because of a massive writing block. Ever start a project but find yourself unable to finish it? That's exactly what happened to Ha-jun. When he read the email, he thought his readers might be asking for a fresh take on the story, especially since he hadn't updated it in so long. Already feeling guilty about neglecting his book, he wondered if it was just a joke or a strange fan request. Wanting to be responsible, he replied to the email. But what seemed like a tiny, unimportant decision ended up changing his life forever. That simple response set off the chain of events that led to him waking up inside his own creation. Now back to where we left off. Our faceless author is beginning to get used to his strange appearance. It's been 2 weeks, 14 whole days, and nothing has changed. His face is still a mystery. These 2 weeks have been enough to confirm that this is not a dream. He really is living inside the world of his novel. Everything in the book is something Hajin himself imagined and brought to life. And now he's walking among the characters he created. The person whose body he now inhabits, Kim Chuan-dong, is just one of the many minor characters in the story. Despite being in this body, Hajin is completely clueless about how or why he ended up here. Naturally, he's tried everything he could think of to figure it out, but his efforts have led nowhere. He has no answers about who or what is responsible for his current situation. Even worse, he's unsure how he's going to survive in this dangerous world, especially since there's no way for him to go back home. Hajin calculates that it could take 10 years to reach the point in the story where he had stopped writing. The thought of surviving for an entire decade in this unfamiliar world terrifies him. The fact that his face is still blank doesn't make things any better. He mourns the life he left behind and dreads being stuck in an unfinished novel with no conclusion in sight. Exhausted and desperate, Hajin once again tries to figure out how to reverse the process that brought him here. The only possible way out that he can think of is to somehow reach the part of the story where he stopped writing. If he manages to keep going until the story is halfway complete, maybe he'll be freed from this nightmare. With no other plan, he decides that's what he's going to aim for. But to achieve this goal, he'll have to relive life as a high school student. Let's shift our attention to the Q, the training center where all the action happens. It's a man-made island designed to train the best heroes for the future. It's like a small city with 50,000 people living there, showcasing humanity's most advanced magic and technology. The cube is the reason Korea is considered a superpower in this story. Standing before the cube's hero training center, Hajin reflects on how it's the main stage of his novel. Everything important takes place here. The training center is a stunning blue structure where heroes master their unique abilities. These powers, called gifts, are what make the characters in Hajin's stories so special. Only the top-tier heroes, the very best, are chosen to become cadets at the Q. Kim Chuan-dong, whose body Hajin is now inhabiting, is one of these cadets. This means that he must have some abilities of his own. The problem is, Hajin has no idea what those powers are. He's starting from zero, unsure of what skills or talents Chuan-dong might have. Even though Hajin feels completely lost, he's confident that Chuan-dong must have some connection to the cube's training center. He's determined to gather whatever resources he can to give himself an edge, because that's the only way he has any chance of surviving in this intimidating school filled with competitive cadets. Hajin walks into class, Veritas, a room known as the heart of the cube's training facility. This room holds everyone, the strong, the weak, the beautiful, and the not so beautiful. There's Jung-hak, and even the novel's protagonist, Suho. These characters will pursue their own goals and encounter events that will set many things into motion. Hajin sits down at his desk feeling annoyed at the idea of spending 10 long years in the same class with these people. To make it worse, he doesn't even have a proper face to present himself with confidence. It's the most frustrating outcome the author could imagine. After class ends, the students return to their dorms, and Hajin is no exception. He can't even figure out how to describe his day. He wonders how he managed to stay focused in class, something he hadn't done since his first time in high school. Suddenly, a delivering package grabs his attention. This catches him off guard, as he never included anything about deliveries in the world of his novel. As he opens the box, countless thoughts swirl in his mind. Could these be Chuan-dong's belongings? To his utter disbelief, it's his own laptop. None of it makes sense, not even to Hajin. An item like this shouldn't exist in this world. The laptop boots up and a system screen appears, startling him. Hajin instinctively drops the laptop in shock. The screen flashes, showing a message about his synchronization with Chuan-dong. The system quickly downloads all the relevant data and displays several status, such as strength, intelligence, and even luck. What surprises him more is that these are the exact status Hajin had written into the novel himself. Questions flood his mind, but before he can make sense of anything, his body starts to change as the synchronization completes. The screen goes blank for a moment before flashing a new message. He has unlocked the setting intervention ability. The once faceless body of Chuan-dong morphs into Hajin's real form, resetting all his status. Hajin's reality has been completely rewritten. This time, when he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see a question mark staring back at him. Instead, he sees a real face, his actual face. However, things are far from simple. Dozens of system screens suddenly appear, and Hajin has no idea what any of them mean. The system confirms the synchronization process, leaving Hajin to wonder if this is tied to a unique process called enlightenment. Enlightenment, as it's described in this world, is an awakening that happens when a person breaks through their limits. Hajin knows this because he's the one who created the concept. After experiencing enlightenment, a person's powers, skills, and talents are converted into a digital format, making them easier to access. The real shot for Hajin is the potential growth his body can now achieve. Enlightenment allows him to become much stronger, a chance he never thought possible. Put simply, Hajin can now see his status window, which displays various points and details about his abilities. One of his skills is observation, a fairly basic ability, while another is reading. His status also appear, though they aren't particularly impressive or noteworthy. Hajin decides to carefully examine each of the status screens, one by one. The most intriguing screen is the synchronization tab. It's what transformed him from Chuandong back into his original form, causing the complete reset. What he discovers on the screen is beyond anything he could have imagined. Although he doesn't fully understand how everything changed, Hajin is sure the synchronization process is what altered his appearance. It also explains why his status are far weaker compared to Chuandong, who is supposed to be a proper cadet at the academy. However, instead of focusing on status, Hajin gets points to make up for these weaknesses. Alright, with that settled, Hajin directs his attention to the unique authority tab. This ability lets him create items by spending SP points. Using it consumes his SP bar, but it opens up many new possibilities. SP, or story points, are only earned as the plot moves forward, and his role in the story becomes more significant. Interestingly, Hajin doesn't recall writing anything about story points in his novel. The author starts realizing that if he increases his role in the story, he can influence events and earn more story points as a result. Slowly, he begins to connect the dots about why he has access to the laptop and status screens. It's because his role is to face incredible challenges, fight monsters, and ultimately steer the main storyline. Hajin, frustrated by this conclusion, can't help but curse the very story he created. But before he can vent further, another screen pops up unexpectedly. It contains classified details about something. Feeling stuck, Hajin grows irritated knowing he has to interfere in this world if he wants even the smallest chance of going back to his old life. Resigned, he turns to his laptop and starts working. Realizing he has no other option, Hajin decides it's better to act now than to wait for the plot to reach the point where his novel ended. Even so, there's no guarantee he'll return to his original world when he reaches that part of the story. He thinks that even if the confidential data doesn't directly help him get home, it might still provide valuable hints to navigate this new world and help him connect with the main characters. To achieve his goals, Hajin knows he must fight and grow stronger. He begins using his points to ensure he can survive the unfolding events. Speaking of upgrading and boosting points, Hajin reflects on how his novel doesn't include the usual concept of freely improving one's status. The typical leveling up mechanics from other stories aren't present in his story. The only way to enhance abilities is by using points, making them an essential resource. The most efficient way to spend points, he realizes, is by investing in the luck status. Unlike other status, luck isn't restricted and always provides some benefit. It helps with wealth, bonuses, and even forming relationships. A perfect status for making everyday life easier. Essentially, it's like a cheat code for life. However, luck points themselves can't be raised directly, which makes Hajin wonder if he can manipulate his luck by converting points into SP points. To test this theory, Hajin attempts a small experiment by transferring 10 points into 10,000 SP points. Next, he uses 9,000 SP points to enhance his luck status, giving it a boost of 9. The mysterious luck ability kicks in, slightly increasing his passive luck status by 1. This proves that luck's passive effect can even improve itself, making it an extremely valuable status. Satisfied, Hajin turns his focus to the protagonist Suho's status. Suho's magic status stands strong at 9, which is its maximum limit. However, Hajin has now surpassed it by raising his luck status to 9.1. With his remaining story points, Hajin invests in perseverance to help him endure the academy's rigorous training. The boost to his luck status also enhances his perseverance, making him feel grateful as the improvements are already showing results. Out of nowhere, the system malfunctions and displays a warning screen. It turns out Hajin's meddling with probability has caused an error since he was essentially exploiting the system. It sets a restriction to prevent this from happening again. From now on, Hajin is barred from modifying abstract status using story points. The author is a little peeved that he was hit with a restriction like that, because otherwise he would be too overpowered. Hajin realizes that he has hit a wall with his gimmicks, but still, he managed to increase both luck and perseverance to a high level, which should be enough for him to overcome many obstacles in the story. A thought crosses his mind. He gained 10,000 story points for being a novice. Those points can be used pretty sparingly. Hajin wants to put more thought into what he's going to invest them in, so for now, he decides to keep them aside. The next morning he shows up in his class. Their professor gives them an introduction. Kim Soo-hyuk will be acting as their instructor for the next year. He's globally recognized as one of the most capable heroes, notably standing in the intermediate grade 5 rank in the association. Concluding his introduction, the man alludes to his point. He mentions how the institution known as the Cube isn't just a fancy place for the cadets to enjoy as they please. Its most reliable indicator is the student grade, which means failing to achieve them and uphold them to a standard will end up with the cadet getting kicked out. It's also not easy to just maintain one's grades, as only half of the cadets will even manage to survive the program without bailing. The institution strives and cultivates the next generation of heroes, so their category for judgment will also be harsh. The instructor commands K students to get up and follow his lead, as the first schedule will talk about deciding on a main weapon for each cadet. Entering the weapons room, the students are left speechless, eyeing down on all kinds of beautiful yet terrifying weapons. Their amazement was quickly shattered by their strict, no-nonsense teacher, who reminds them that this isn't playtime for them to enjoy, and commands the students to pick a weapon at once. He also advises them that after choosing a weapon, they won't be able to switch from it for at least 6 months, which means, if you make a mistake now, you will be stuck for half a year with a terrible weapon. Kim Soo-ho, the protagonist of the novel, is drawn towards a sword, and finds himself satisfied holding it. One of the girls decides to pick a bow and arrow, believing that she's fit to become an archer. Then there's a girl with blonde hair, who prefers a rapier for precise strikes. The other students also choose different weapons like whips and other things. The author, Hyejin, is contemplating how most of the main characters are simply choosing weapons without giving it a second thought. But instead of focusing on what they're choosing, he has to ultimately decide one weapon for himself. As he lays down his options, Hyejin believes that he has to be careful, because even the slightest misstep could become a problem for him. His current stats are seriously low, so he can't compare to other cadets when it comes to weapons like spears or swords. The same goes for defensive shields. To make his selection process simpler, Hyejin decides to carve out a bunch of conditions for his weapon selection. The first aspect he is considering is that the weapon has been used in his previous world, and the second factor is that he should be able to adapt to it with ease. When it comes down to those two factors, Hyejin finally decides to choose his weapon. His selection in particular draws the attention of the rest of the students, even their teacher. Their teacher is bewildered and particularly addresses Hyejin, asking if the gun he is holding in his hand is really the weapon he's going to select. Everyone whispered about him choosing the gun as his weapon of choice. Hyejin receives a stare from his teacher, who is confused because he remembers the cadet listing himself as a sword user back at his academy. Deciding to come up with an excuse, Hyejin states that he changed his mind. It's a surprising reason for his teacher to accept, who can't grasp why Hyejin would decide to switch his weapon of expertise right when he entered the academy. The teacher confirms his choice as the student chooses their own fate in the cube. In a wave of frustration, he advises Hyejin to remember that his responsibility for choosing his fate rests with him. Suddenly, the author's super hearing ability kicks into overdrive. He hears murmurs of the other students making fun of him for picking a gun. None of them can comprehend his reason for using a firearm in an academy that is supposed to bring up elite heroes. Some of them even wonder if they should advise him during combat practice, taking him for an attention seeker and nothing more. Despite the crybabies making fun of this man, the author explains that guns are actually reliable even in this world. They're the best weapon for ordinary people who don't have access to magical superpowers. The bullets used in this world are of a special kind. Magic bullets have mana imbued inside of them, releasing a destructive shot that's even more devastating and wrathful than normal bullets. However, those are the only advantages of a gun. The reason they're seen as a terrible choice and neglected for their use is because they don't have the ability to grow in power. This is demonstrated by Kim Horak, who effortlessly smashes a bullet with his bare fists. The author further adds that the limitation of the magic bullets rests in their destructive power, which is always fixed no matter who is using the weapon. The second reason relates to their build. They have a weak origin and formation. This world differs from the real one, in the sense that myths and legends are actually materialized. These myths and relics are given form and made into weapons, causing the wielder an immense advantage in battle. The older the origin, the greater is the formation, overall boosting the weapon's grade hierarchy, which is the most crucial factor for how effective it is. Because of that, nobody among the cadets tries to pick weapons that are modern and newly created. Since they have weak origin points for being made in the modern era, older medieval weapons take more preference and are generally stronger. Instead of relying on the destructive power of the magic bullets, they rely on their personal skills and even skyrocket their growth using the weapon's power, surpassing their limitations. But everything Hyejin mentioned so far is basically useless for him. He's got nothing to benefit from, and he's definitely not the protagonist of the story. He doesn't know how a sword works, and believes his skills with a melee weapon will be far worse than the other cadets. Internalizing his thought process, Hyejin believes that he chose a gun for a good reason. He knows how to use it, and it will effectively help him earn story points, because simply using the gun is bound to help him stand out among his peers. The more important he is to the story, the more story points he will earn. That's what he's hoping for. Now that he's done figuring out what to do with a weapon, his next concern comes with obtaining talent. Talent is an ability special to this world, so special that it's considered a superpower. Every person is supposed to have only one talent or superpower, but there are some individuals who are exempt from this rule. There's the protagonist of the story, Suho, who hasn't manifested his talent yet, and already possesses the skills of a sword saint. The scene shifts to Suho, who catches up with Nayun to train. His dense protagonist dialogue earns in Nayun's anger, who doesn't get how a dude like him ended up at the top of their class. Suho changes the topic and mentions that there's another top student beside him in class. At first Nayun is confused, then she remembers he's talking about Hajin, aka Kim Shindam. That guy's name alone turns her face into a sour expression. It's because this Hajin student is a joke for being called the top student in class. Yoon couldn't fathom how he was taken seriously with a tiny pistol in limited range. She figures that the guy probably gave up on becoming a hero and stuck to stupid weapons. Nayun wonders if this is Hajin's strategy to drop out somewhere in the middle of the year, but hearing those words, Suho can't help but criticize her for being rash about the situation. Nayun doesn't get what he's yapping about and stares at him with a puzzled expression. She lashes out on the guy for wasting her time instead of training. While they're yapping about Hajin, he's out here dozing and wondering if he will earn SP for people talking shit behind his back. Hajin reflects that the protagonist of the story, Suho, is supposed to become the greatest hero ever using his one gift, which means gifts are also equally important to Hajin. He doesn't want to waste the opportunity of purchasing his first gift. Using his manual, Hajin writes himself a Dead Eye gift. It's the ability to slow time, like Dead Eye in Red Dead Redemption 2. As a consequence of him writing down his newest power, 10,000 SP points have been deducted from his account. The system is so advanced that it edits everything else on its own, providing him with numerous perks of the skill he just wrote, like bullet time and others. The skill is handy for not just his gun but all weapons involving range, which means Hajin could also use bows now. To top off the benefits, it's a growth-type skill. So while it seems terrible at the moment, he could always nurture it and grow his skills. It's a valuable investment in the long run. Hajin figures it's best to go with what he has, and with his preparations finished, he feels ready for what's to come. With the only gift he has, all that's left for him is to bet everything on it and survive until the main story reaches its end. The scene switches over to their class. The teacher is explaining strategies regarding how the cadets should deal with towers and dungeons. The funniest part is for Hajin to realize that the explanations he wrote in his novel are now appearing in the textbooks of this class. Imagine taking a class of materials you wrote and created. Hajin is having an easy time just enjoying the lectures since he doesn't really have anything new to learn. He's actively deploying his observation and reading gifts to help him. More information about these two gifts is provided. Observation allows him to observe everything in his field of vision. He can see through things and even read stuff from his laptop without having to waste effort. The teacher instructs them to review the content of the lectures since their written exam is supposed to begin soon. Nayun gets fired up in frustration. She's bored to death and really can't stand the lecture. Suddenly, Class Veritas is interrupted by someone who instructs the cadets to show up at the plaza. Hearing this, Nayun is excited she gets to escape the boring lecture. Opposite to her, Hajin hates training sessions, a subject that our boy Hajin isn't looking forward to. Arriving in the training arena, the teacher explains how everyone should already know about the contents of the class. First, they will make teams of 4 cadets each, consisting of 2 warriors, a sharpshooter, and finally 1 support warrior. Further, these teams will remain the same until their mid-semester exams come around. All teams are supposed to be balanced between the high-ranking and low-ranking cadets for a fair competition. The instructor told them, "Move your asses, find your teammates at once." Hajin glances at the status board, shocked to note that he's neither in Suho's team or Nayun's. Worst of all, he's stuck in a team with the one person he didn't want to pair up with. The person in question is Yeonha, drawing a surprising look from his face. Things are unraveling exactly like in the novel. Many main characters were written down specifically to interact with the main character of the story, causing events to transpire and forward the story. However, among those characters, Yeonha is the most special. She dons a beautiful purple hair, and is simultaneously the top favorite cadet of Korea's best guild, the essence of the straight. What's more, she's the successor of the Yu family, so her family background is pretty strong too. In the original novel, Suho is supposed to oppose Yeonha at the beginning, but eventually he gains her trust, and they become friends, later becoming the supporter of the team. For this same reason, it's crucial for Hajin to grow closer to Yeonha, because interacting with her will allow him to get even more story points, helping him become important in the story. With a determined expression, Hajin is prepared to do whatever it takes to attract Yana's attention and involve himself with her. Yana's team members come and greet her. Apart from her and Hajin, there's Hosung and Hazuki. making them a team of 4 just like planned. Since Yeonha is a thoughtful and calculating person, she contemplates speaking with them at first, but ultimately accepts because they're her teammates. What's funny is that she boasts a blooming informal attitude with her teammates once she decides to talk to them. Both of her teammates are weirded out, but Yeonha turns her attention to the final member of the group. Hajin makes his presence known by coming forward and approaching her. While he's a little scared, he knows that Yeonha will have a sour relationship with him if he's not confident in carrying himself. Hosung interrupts his train of thought and immediately calls him out for being the hotshot who chose a gun as his weapon. The dude is busy yapping around carelessly, not knowing that their teacher is about to slap the shit out of him for chatting ignorantly. Hosung receives a jump scare from their instructor, who roars at them to get moving with the monster hunting mission. The directions have already been provided to each team through their smartwatches. Our team gets their move on and paces in the grain field. Yeonha checks her smartwatch, indicating that they're close to their target. She wants her team to buckle up and prepare for what's to come. Further information regarding the monster will be revealed when they arrive at the location, but while they're easily sprinting ahead, our poor boy is struggling. He needs some serious motivation, because he's never had to run this much before. Despite his stamina stats being above average, he could barely keep up with his team. To make matters worse, it's not like these guys are special. They're the average standard recognized for a cube cadet. Yeonha and the others stop, realizing they've arrived at their target's location. This part of the map is called the 8th coast of the training zone. Ahead is a boat where a monster is supposed to appear. Speaking of the devil, the black hump octopus makes itself known by devouring the boat with its giant tentacles. Before confronting the monster in a head-on battle, Yeonha believes it would be best if they shared a battle strategy and worked on what they should do. The monster they're facing is a low intermediate grade creature, and its physical attack is known to be very weak. The real problem is the humps pointing out on the creature's head. It's explained that the black hump octopus detects danger and shoots out baby octopuses to attack its enemies. These small babies are no joke. They are bloodthirsty motherfishers, each one capable of turning a human into a mummy with their deadly power. Hosung suggests they immediately target the throng of baby octopuses when the fight kicks off. The girl Hazuki believes they're going to need a sharpshooter to handle the small octopuses with his gun, so she thinks Hygiene would be best for that. However, opposing this idea strongly, Yeonha claims that she's going to be the one to handle the baby octopuses instead. She wants the rest of her team to save their abilities after she's done, because Yeonha thinks they'll need to annihilate the monster in one hit, since it has super fast regeneration abilities. Yeonha's sudden dismissal of Hyjin's contribution strikes him as odd. He quickly figures out that she just fucking hates him, and doesn't even believe he's worthy to be a part of this training. Yeonha asks if the rest of her team is ready. She marks the beginning of their operation, leaving our boy a little annoyed by her damn attitude. The black hump octopus unleashes its destruction by destroying the boat, while Hosung uses his battle axe to draw the creature's attention towards him. His loud, ugly sound was enough to attract the octopus and lure it closer to the shore. Enraged, the monster blitzes towards Hosung and unleashes itself. Poor guy is scared shitless by its sheer size and runs the heck away. Hazuki is prepared while our boy Hyjin is also nervous holding a tiny Glock. The only determined fighter among them is Yeonha, a whip user who is ready to strike down the monster at once. Just like they discussed, the black hump octopus senses danger and immediately shoots out many baby octopuses from the top of its head. This causes Hosung to panic, because he realizes that he's the one being targeted. The murdering babies are headed straight to bite his ass down. A baby octopus was sneaking up, ready to bite his ass. Yeonha steps up like a queen and uses her whip to cut the octopuses down. She stands majestically before the monster, impressing the likes of her teammate with a display of her power. To top it off, Yeonha's combat capabilities alone render her the 7th strongest cadet inside the cube among the newbies. She allows Hosung the chance to run away while she's holding the monster by herself. Yeonha manipulates her whip to strike the monster, causing the octopus to go berserk and strike her down with its tentacles. Yeonha quickly dodges its attack by evading, but right as she's in the air, a baby octopus is sneakily about to attack her from behind. Hazuki alerts her to care for the octopus behind her back. Before Yeonha can react to the creature, it is shot down by a long-range weapon, baffling her. Only one explanation makes sense. It's Hajin's gun who saved her just now. Seeing him save her annoys Yeonha, who finally acknowledges his name. Let's take a little detour and discuss what SB points are capable of. Like previously stated, they can be exchanged for stat points. They also increase when Hajin's importance among the main characters and the story rises. Since he's supposed to be nudged in as an extra, nobody, standing out and gaining popularity is a tough thing. The main characters already fill up the story after all, so the only other option to gain importance is for Hajin to interact and help with the story of the main protagonist. That's what he did by saving Yeonha's life just now. His shot shocks each of his team members. A distracted Yeonha reminds him to know his place and she wasn't expecting him to take part in the operation. But while she's distracted, the giant octopus shoots out another attack for them to deal with. Yeonha prepares to fight them, and some of them are even targeting Hajin. It's not a tough fight for the author, who can read their attack patterns with ease. Hajin closes his eyes, concentrating his full attention to performing his best in the given moment. He activates one of his skills called Bullet Time, which was one of the gifts that the system created and edited for him. Using it slows down the perception of time for 3 seconds, easily allow him to become sharpshooter and beat all the octopuses with ease. He uses Red Dead Redemption's Deadeye to take down the octopuses in seconds, and shoots the gun out of all the mother fishers. By the time 3 seconds are up, Hajin has shot every single one of the creatures with his gun, even the ones that were targeting Yeonha. The duration runs out, unleashing his bullets to fly away and zap each of the octopuses to paste. Now, Yeonha senses the opportunity to strike the giant octopus's head. Unleashing her whip, she binds the humps and commands her team to strike. Hasing and Hazuki make their move, unleashing Magic Liberation Strike and slaying the monster in a powerful joint attack. The black hump octopus is defeated at last, with its ugly brains hitting the shore. An exhausted Hajin crashes down, in typical anime character fashion. After that, their team's collective results are calculated, allowing them a clearance time just underneath 1 hour. It's far from the best, but it still earned them 16th place in the ranking board. With that, the first monster round has been cleared. The total time spent eliminating the monster lands them the 16th spot among the 100 teams. Yeonha is shocked to see this. Their fight was recorded via a drone device for monitoring purposes. They can use that data to analyze their mistakes and improve in the future. While 16th place is an accomplishment, to Yeonha, it's a terrible score. She was looking for something higher. She's even more jealous that Naeun casually acquired a higher score than her in individual and team performance, ranking her the 4th out of the 100 teams. While she intended to increase the gap between their families, Yeonha can't believe she's so far behind her. Then there's Jonghyuk, the arrogant punk who seems to have a liking for Naeun and keeps staring at her from afar. Now pissed, Yeonha gets annoyed and approaches Naeun with her unbridled rage, but in a funny turn of events she acts all buddy-buddy with her like a fake friend. She tries to extract information regarding Naeun's performance in her team. The girl is still annoyed that they got 4th place, since she was looking forward to beating Jonghyuk at the minimum. Yeonha confesses that she earned 16th place. Her expression is a calm and stoic face on the outside, but on the inside, she's chewing her brains out, angered beyond hell. But Naeun is rather amazed that she acquired 16th place with a loser like Hajin on her team. After all, she thinks he must be the reason they were stuck behind a low ranking. But Yeonha knows the truth. The reason she was treating him like shit is because they took 50 minutes to travel to their location because of our boy's shit stamina. If only he was faster, they could have arrived in 10 minutes and completed the mission faster. But apart from that, his performance has been impressive to her. He significantly helped in the monster battle they faced. Yeonha keenly remember that how he shot the gun out of every single baby octopuses before they can even reach them. Yeonha ponders if an achievement like that is even possible with the use of regular magic bullets. Since Hajin's accomplishments seem effortless and strong, all of a sudden from having no interest in him, Yeonha is now curious about the man's true identity. As for our boy Hajin, he's just gotten done working out. I bet he must be steamrolling himself to get better stamina after what happened back there. The author explains that he forgot to check his alarms ever since he started training and wonders how much he gained points. Since luck is always helping him out at max potential, his accuracy for defeating the monster has shot up dramatically. His gift has also experienced growth. Now every single shot will be considered a bullseye target. Hajin's senses like eyesight and hearing have also sharpened, and overall story points increased by just 27. Remembering what happened with his performance in the monster round, Hajin reflects that luck must be playing a key role then too, helping out with his SP points. His overall plan to involve himself with Yeonha is going well so far, helping him with the points he needs. His physical stats have also increased thanks to his training. Strength, endurance, and health have all experienced a boost which is further amplified by his luck stat. Since Hajin has already worked on his stats to this degree, he believes that he should conclude his training session for the day and head home. Back at her dorm room, Yeonha is busy reviewing the footage of their fight in the monster round. She's specifically drawn to Hajin's crazy shooting skills, as he was able to shoot 60 bullets in the span of 3 seconds with a single handgun. For reference, Yeonha tries to play around with the idea of shooting 20 bullets a second. It just seems impossible to her to do that with a handgun, which makes her wonder if it was an automatic pistol of some kind. She comments on his physical stats too. Hajin's agility is great, but his typical health and physicality is lower than the rest of the cadets. To top it off, he switched weapons out of the blue at the weapon selection. Yeonha's sharp senses are telling her that something is wrong. She doesn't even remember this guy from the military academy either. While she's contemplating, Yeonha receives a message from Jeonhak, who she seems to find as a love interest. She tells him that she's busy analyzing the footage. Yeonha wants to see if she struck gold among her team since she obviously plans to take over the top guild in Korea in the future. But Jeonhak is surprised and doesn't think anyone among her team is noteworthy or special. More importantly, he wants to know about the mysterious shooter, since his performance is the only one Jeonhak is curious about. With a smile on her face, Yeonha is excited that her crush is displaying an interest in her after all. Yeonha comments that he's doing just okay for his rank, which by the way, is in the 900s among the cadets. Jeonhak is surprised and wonders if Hajin got lucky. Yeonha reflects on this comment and wonders if Hajin's performance was really a fluke, and if he really did get lucky. The scene ends there, so let's talk about a new subject. The guild building known as the Holy Grace of God. Here the vice captain is obsessed over Suho's stellar performance. His footage among the rest has captivated Sunga, the vice captain of the guild. She comments on Suho's perfect and precise movements, as well as excellent swordsmanship unlike anything seen before. Suho has achieved such perfection that it seems like he's playing around in a gentle dance. There's also his wrathful cutting force, slicing away the very space in half. All three top guilds in Korea currently have their eyes set on this young talent. They're hell-bent on recruiting him for his powers. Suna is among those people, as she wants to recruit him as soon as possible, especially since he's currently a free agent. Her next topic of interest is Hajin. As shocking as that sounds, she's surprised that the boy uses a handgun of all weapons. Her assistant confirms, stating that he sparked an interest in the guild community. Many people reviewed the footage since Yeonha was a part of his team and they wanted to view her performance. The hot topic on the forums is how he shot 60 rounds with a non-automatic pistol in 3 seconds. It doesn't make any realistic sense, because even if they accounted for his extreme agility, Hajin's gun wouldn't be able to survive the brunt of so much recoil in so little time. Since his talent is surrounded by a wave of mystery and allure, some people have started calling him unorthodox. The vice captain also comes to learn that he's switched his main weapon from a sword and transitioned to using a handgun right after coming to the prestigious institution. Sunga recognizes him as someone who has achieved enlightenment, the same phenomenon in which a person manifests their talent or special ability. It's of course impossible to know from the start what talent will be manifested. Because of that, some cadets prefer to switch weapons right after manifesting their gifts, since it doesn't match what they're currently using. However, this kind of situation is known to cause a rift in the cadets' career, setting them back by at least 3 years in terms of performance. That's why the military academy usually encourages the students to become involved with numerous weapons and master them instead of relying on a single one. Sunga can't grasp the fact that the boy became an enlightened warrior at the age of 17, but she thinks his talent is limited if it is only related to guns. Still, she thinks he's worthy enough to be reviewed as a candidate. Seolna quickly changes her mind and decides that it would be best to allow Hajin's talent to manifest before they attempt to recruit him. She wants to see if he's really capable of achieving her expectations as an unorthodox. It's Wednesday, which means a training session is going on. Suho is facing another student in an equal clash. This part of the training program is called the anti-personnel training. It's usually executed by 2-person groups, where only training weapons are used, allowing for easy results and little to no injuries. However, for Kim Hajin, he's being roared at for performing the worst. Poor guy has the shittiest luck in the world despite his passive skill. He's the only student who had to face his teacher instead of another student, and as a result, he lost 18 times straight. The real issue with this training is that training guns aren't ready to be used, which means using a real gun is obviously going to cause injury if he faces another student. That's why the instructor himself has taken responsibility to face Hajin and handle him. Poor guy is suffering and calls for surrender, but his pathetic whining is ignored by his teacher who prepares to chuck a fist in his face. Before his punch reaches Hajin, the warrior evades a critical strike that crushes the ground. His teacher is shocked that he dodged the attack. Hajin proceeds to dodge another 2 punches from him, leading the instructor to realize that while he seems like a trash student with shitty posture, he's actually got a godly pair of eyes for tracking his attacks. Clairvoyance, yet another skill Hajin obtained as part of his Dead-Eye gift. This sharpens his senses and allows him to detect a target's movement path, helping Hajin loosely evade every attack. It's true that he can see the attacks, but the worst part is dodging with his own body. The rest of the students view his performance and chalk it down as clumsy and lazy. The gang may be making fun of him for being a loser. It still helps boost his story points by 40, so in a way, he did manage to get what he wanted. But he hates the fact that people are making fun of him. After the exhausting training, Hajin relaxes by taking a refreshment. When he turns to his right, he sees Yeonha passing him by. She shares a look of disgust on her face, almost as if she views him as an inferior nobody. It's funny because he's the author who wrote about her personality in the first place. He's in an experimental mood today and decides to call out Yeonha's name before tossing her a drink. She catches it with her reflexes, and confusingly asks if he's taunting her to a fight. Bro's riz is so bad that she's out here thinking he's literally trying to attack her. Hajin explains that he's just trying to extend his gratitude to Yeonha for helping them advance in the training session. In his head, this experiment may be simple, but it's an important one. He wants to see just how much story points he will achieve in a simple interaction from one of the main characters of the story. After all, he tends to gain 40 from the side characters. Yeonha tosses him his drink back and reminds the idiot not to address her so casually. A first warning that he shouldn't take lightly. While she turns away, Hajin has a smile on his face because he's already gotten what he wanted. As Yeonha is carrying her bag outside, she is puzzled to find that her bag is heavier than before. Detecting the subtle change, she opens it up, only to find another can inside. Our smartass author was sneaky enough to plant a second one inside of her bag, earning Yeonha's hatred. She wants to smash the can, but remembers that a simple innocent can didn't do anything wrong by itself. When it comes to Yeonha, she loves ordinary food like burgers and Coke. However, she is never seen purchasing the product for herself because of her family's reputation. This experiment relied on Hajin exploiting this part of her personality, a part that no one else should know about. What's more, is that he didn't really earn much points from a small conversation, once again motivating him to take action in the events of the main story, since he already knows what's going to happen next. Hajin believes the National Weapons Museum's demonic human ambush is soon to take place. Demonic humans are evil entities who have made a pact with a demon. They're granted a significant amount of power in exchange for their souls. This way, the demons use them as their tools to do their biddings. The incident to happen in the future will be caused by a demonic human who is currently hiding in the museum with the goal of eliminating a particular target. Eventually, the demonic human is defeated by Suho and the rest of the main characters who also happen to be there at the event. Through this event, Suho gains the recognition and validation of the other main characters. The main protagonists will be Suho and Naeun, who are going to fight against the demonic humans. The villain won't be too difficult to deal with, since this happens right at the beginning of the novel, and is effectively Suho's first enemy. Knowing what will happen ahead, Hajin is already thinking of ways to intervene in the event. While he's figuring out a way to join the museum, one of the instructors shouts at him for standing pointlessly outside the dorms. Hajin decides to take his laptop and leave. During the same time, he receives an important system message yet to be revealed. In this institution, there are clubs that are used for extracurricular activities within the academy. Cadets can register themselves in a gathering where they form their own independent activities. Among those clubs are academics, martial arts, and even simple hobbies like painting and other instruments. Hundreds of clubs exist inside the cube. Perhaps the greatest benefit is that they not only host a space for personal development, but also allow the cadets to connect, network, and know each other better. So it finally came the day where Hajin decided he was going to join a club of his own. At the cube gate, Hajin makes himself part of the travel club, where he is greeted by Han-Yun, the club's president. He's excited to welcome many club members from the first years. In fact, when receiving the applications for the first time, Han-Yun couldn't believe what he was reading. He's been blessed with amazing cadets after all. Han-Yun welcomes them aboard once more and highlights the goal of their club. The goal is to rest, which sounds simple enough. They can access a portal up to twice a month to travel outside of the cube. For their first ever orientation, Han-Yun states that they'll be visiting a nearby location. That location is none other than Seoul, the capital of Korea. The author processes his thoughts, realizing that a trip to Seoul should be easily managed if they just made groups of 2. So far, nothing has changed from the novel. Hajin glosses over his objective for the day, which is to take part in the first main story arc, called the Seoul Weapon Museum. When he's there with some of the main characters, Hyunjin will attempt to manipulate the story from his side. The club president instructs them to go on ahead and draw lots, which actually catches Hajin's attention, as he never intended the group formation to be this way in the novel. Still, it doesn't bother him, since this guy could care less and move on his own when it comes to his group's partner. Lo and behold, you'd be surprised, but he ended up pairing up with Yeonha of all people. Yeonha, being herself, emphasizes with caution that they should just move on their own. Hajin is okay with that and leaves her to her business. Before leaving, Yeonha turns around with a lethal look on her face, the face that screams, "I will fucking kill you if you ever talk to me casually one more time." This being his second offense, Hajin receives his final warning as Yeonha isn't planning on letting him off next time. The guy simply accepts his fate and moves forward. The scene shifts to the National Weapons Museum, which is supposed to be the center stage for the first arc of the story. It's the largest exhibition hall of weapon replicas across the entire country. While it's a remarkable place, Hajin is breezing through the crowd with disinterest. He spots Naeun to his left, who seems to be obsessed with a particular weapon. Since Naeun is close by, Hajin realizes that the main protagonist of the story must also be near him. Suho is just up ahead observing a weapon on his own as the main protagonist of the novel. Hajin attempts to spark conversation with him and asks if he's checking out the seven-branched sword. He also introduces himself at the same time, which reminds Suho of who he is. He keenly remembers him as the sharpshooter who joined the travel club. Hajin reflects on Suho's personality, as he was written to be strong and handsome with a good heart. Oftentimes his very own readers left the author hate comments for making an unrealistic and cheesy character. Damn, I guess haters keep hating. All of a sudden, Suho claims that there's a gun exhibition close by, and he's interested in checking it out with Hajin. While Hajin accepts his idea, he thinks their meeting at the gun exhibition won't even happen because of what's to come. From out of nowhere, the museum goes red and a transmission sounds the warning of monsters appearing right outside the museum. The appearance of monsters strikes fear in the hearts of the civilians. Their excitement turns to horror as they all begin to panic and frantically start looking for an exit. The people push each other around, ignoring even the children and simply acting recklessly. In this state of panic and chaos, one person punches the glass with his fist, gaining everyone's attention. His sheer power alone stops them dead in their tracks. Even Suho is shocked when he finds out that Nayun's the one responsible. She tells everyone to calm down as the museum's reserve hero will be here soon to combat the threat. Using this opportunity, she snags the bow from the exhibition and reminds everyone that they'll just be living targets for the monsters if they rush outside. But her reckless move causes the security systems to go off, and trapping them all in place inside. She tells everyone to grab a weapon, since they need a way to protect themselves until the real heroes show up to confront the threat. Suddenly, Nayun senses the presence of a dangerous man in the distance and prepares herself. This man radiates a dark energy of red. His face and violent aura confirms that he's a demonic human who is responsible for this devious plan. Hajin reflects that this demonic human is called the Dog of Lucius, who becomes a villain that is pivotal for Suho's growth in the story. The demon unleashes its claws, preparing to cut Nayun down, but right as he's distracted and focusing on what's ahead, Suho uses this moment to jump him from behind with his seven-branched sword. His sword is about to slice the demon clean, and the events of the main story still haven't changed. It's destined for Suho to defeat this demon with ease. But for some shocking reason, Suho is wiped away in a devastating attack. His body suffers a terrifying blow from the villain, and flops to the ground, right before Hajin's eyes. The author is expressionless and speechless. This wasn't supposed to happen after all. Suho's body is on the ground, just a few moments away from Hajin, who can't figure out what happened. Clearly the story he wrote himself wasn't supposed to happen like this. Suho was supposed to win, and even though he would have struggled in the beginning, he still has the power to completely annihilate the demonic human. That's what he thought was going to happen. But it didn't. Suho's easy takedown causes Nayun immense worry as she screams his name. Coughing blood, he's barely capable of standing. Hajin knows that his condition is in grave danger, and he certainly doesn't have enough time to recover from this monumental setback. The demonic human approaches Suho with his menacing energy, preparing to finish him off. Nayun struggles to come up with a plan and speedily launches her arrows right in his face. But this guy is such a tank. He eats that shit in the face like it's his lunch. A confused Nayun relentlessly tries to shoot him down, but nothing works, as he seems to be invincible against her arrows. Knowing that none of her arrows are having any effect on him, Nayun's face succumbs to despair. Her confidence wavers, and she simply can't fathom what's happening. What's more is that the demonic human isn't even using a special talent or skill to block her arrows. No. He's just taking it with the brunt of his body. That's just how strong his physical stats are. Hajin senses danger for Nayun as she's being approached by the enemy. The demonic human releases its claws, aiming right for her face. It seems like the end for Nayun, right until Suho jumps back into the fight with a kick in the face. Thankfully, he was able to get up with Nayun stalling for time, before they can even catch up with each other. Suho is sent flying, barely being capable of blocking the dark energy wave with his sword. The demonic human then surprises Suho by entering a transformation state, engulfing himself with his shadowy aura. His strength becomes so overwhelming for Suho that he is taken down immediately. Nayun starts shooting the demonic human from behind in an effort to delay Suho's demise. Turning his attention back to her, the monster releases a giant claw targeting Nayun's face and smashing her into the wall. Everything that Hajin is witnessing before his eyes is the definition of a disaster. He's horrified by the reality that either of them could die at this point. Now that he's seen 2 instances of his novel going against the script he wrote, Hajin can't figure out what's causing things to change so much in the main story. He kicks open his laptop in an effort to help salvage the situation. Hajin gathers his bullets with his wavering confidence, realizing that he won't be able to injure the demonic human with his mana bullets at all. Even if he uses them for a critical hit, it's just going to be difficult. Still, since this world was created by him, Hajin is confident that most of the important settings shouldn't change, and knowing that, he plucks away at his keyboard, modifying the attributes of his mana bullet to fit his purpose. He increases the attack power to 6 points, and spends a total of 100 story points just to make the modification possible. Loading his magazine right back into his gun, Hajin prepares for the fight and emphasizes the importance of having heroes with versatile skill sets to overcome the situation. Attributes and affinity alone allows him to climb to greater heights. As Suho and the demonic human are locked in a stalemate, this gives Hajin the perfect opportunity to take a shot. Knowing that the demonic human boasts a dark attribute, Hajin uses the only attribute that will exterminate darkness. He calls for Suho's name and shouts at him to move out of his way. Commanding the use of the light attribute, Hajin created the white light bullet. He releases a single shot that confirms the hit with the demonic human's body, and releases a blue beam of light. That one bullet completely destroys the demonic human's arm, rendering him a great deal of pain while at the same time freeing Nayun from his grasp as the dark energy evaporates. Nayun falls to the ground, while Hajin thinks his contribution is enough, now that the enemy is severely injured, allowing Suho enough time to finish the fight. His body is shaking from the use of his ability, as he places the rest of his hopes on Suho, entrusting the story's protagonist to finish the fight with a final attack. Suho charges his weapon and covers his body in an aura of blue. He activates the Sword Saint's magic power, which is so strong that it can throw anything in existence. The ultimate slash definitively ended the fight as Suho destroys the demonic human with one move. The monster is defeated as his body hits the floor, and exhausted Suho is barely clinging on, which is the same for Nayun. He catches up with her and asks if she's okay. Distraught and angry, she whacks his arm away. Hajin recommends that they leave her as she is, since her brother will soon arrive to comfort her in this situation. He knows this because it happens in the original story, but his carelessness got the better of him, as he received a shocking stare from both of the main characters. After all, an extra character like him shouldn't know anything about their lives. Nayun's voice flickers as she tries to interrogate him, but her condition gets the better of her, so she stops. Meanwhile, the monsters just outside the museum are shot down by the vice captain and her dual blades. Thankfully, the situation outside is resolved and the monsters have all been killed. She asks about the situation inside the museum and learns about the demonic human who was instantly killed, thanks to the cadets of the cube. Wanting to know more about them, she asks for their names. The vice captain is shocked to learn that Nayun, Suho, and Hajin were all involved in the incident. She rushes right to the museum because all she cares about is meeting Suho right now. Her excitement makes her wonder what she should discuss with him. Hajin is coming out of the museum when he suddenly runs into her. Curious as she is, she tries to inquire for Suho. Hajin is already one step ahead of her, and tells the vice captain that he's inside the museum. She goes inside but at once experiences a shock, because this random cube cadet seemed to know her intention of finding Suho in the first place. Yet another blunder caused by our believable author. The dude is catching a break in a park, and reflects that he didn't expect Sunga to run into him like that. He wonders if the situation is relevant to the story changing in some ways. To collect his thoughts, Hajin tries to take it from the beginning. He considers himself as nothing more than a foreign extra character, and deems his current importance as insignificant. The story has been progressing smoothly without any problems so far, so it's impossible that he was directly involved in altering its route, but then the realization finally hits him. He forgot about one thing, and that one thing is the fact that this novel also has a co-author. I bet you weren't expecting that plot twist. Hajin explains the current version of the story is a remake of his novel. This version is based around the email he received from one of his fans at the beginning of the story. That's why stuff outside of his expectations happened in the main story arc. However, if that is the case, then the predictions he was operating under so far will now all be useless. This thought terrifies Hajin because he won't know what will happen next. He checks his laptop. There's a message regarding a critique. The message reads that there weren't any main threats in the story, allowing the protagonist to easily swat away any threats and achieve a smooth victory. This kind of development will just risk the readers getting fed up with the story and getting bored. That's why, from now on, every single boss character in the story has become significantly stronger than from before, regardless of the fact that it may create an unpredictable and chaotic story setting. Their instructor calls both Hajin and Suho after the incident for a report. He has briefly explained the situation and doesn't want to go in depth regarding the specifics for now, placing priority over their well-being first. A curious and worried Suho asks about Nayun's condition, and comes to learn from the instructor how she applied for a medical leave and left with her family for the time being. The instructor advises both of them to follow suit and return to their dorms as well, saying that he leaves them be, allowing Suho the chance to speak with Hajin as he calls out his name. The blue-haired protagonist wants to inquire further. He wants to know why he said what he did to Nayun about her brother. For a moment, Hajin seems puzzled, but then he remembers his words. He tries to talk about it but remembers the mail he received from the co-author, and for some reason chooses to stop and ask why it matters to Suho. The protagonist is obviously not a dumbass, and feels rather annoyed that Hajin is playing the part of an idiot and taking him seriously. In his state of annoyance, he decides that they'll talk about it some other time. Let's deep dive into Chae Na-yoon's character. The author explains that she graduated 4th from her year in the military academy. She's currently enrolled at the Cube, recognized for her talents and her connections to the Chae family. She's the daughter of Shin-hyuk and the younger sister of Jin-yoon. Both are recognizable names to Hajin, who is conducting research on her right now. What he doesn't get is why she reacted in the way that she did when he brought up her brother's name. Suddenly, Hajin reads a news report involving Jin-yoon's condition resulting in critical health after a monster operation. As a consequence, Jin-yoon was left in a coma. The operation that led to his demise is one that Hajin knows about. Fiend Suppression Operation, Firestorm was supposed to be an event that allowed Jin-yoon to build his reputation by neutralizing the threat. This would help Jin-yoon improve his relationship with the main story's protagonists even more. For the young Na-yoon, the only thing that sparked joy in her eyes was seeing her older brother's success as a hero. However, the event has completely changed now, and it's different from the author's wildest imaginations. Jin-yoon is the one who caught up in his demise, leading to Na-yoon's trauma. Just then, he receives another mail from the system, notifying him that any further modifications to the story will immediately be revealed to Hajin as soon as he points out the changes from the original story. The system also relays that Jin-yoon's brother, and the supporter of the protagonist Kim Suho, has undergone significant changes in this iteration of the story. We're given a sequence of what went down. The gravely injured hero was barely awake after suffering a brutal strike. The co-author recognized that the protagonist already had way too many supporters, which is why they made the chances necessary to ensure some of them were taken out. Poor Jin-yoon had to be one of those people. 4 years in the past, just after being appointed hero for the first time, Jin-yoon ended up becoming a demon seed. Yes, it's much more terrifying than Hajin's wildest imaginations, as he could never have predicted such a horrifying plot twist. The scene cuts to Na-yoon's place. The radio transmission is talking about the sudden monster attack that occurred at the National Museum, reporting a casualty count of 7 with 50 people injured from the incident. A devastated Na-yoon can't bear to hear the news and turns the transmission off. She sulks in her bed all by herself, while her worried father comes shouting her name. Na-yoon sees him and wonders what he's doing out of duty. Shin-hyuk doesn't give a damn about his work and asks about her health. Since she's at the hospital, he wants her to have a full checkup just to be sure, but Na-yoon pretends to be fine and just alright. She's trying her best not to make her father worry, and even thinks he did too much on his part by coming to visit her. But of course he's still a worried father who cares for his daughter, despite her claims of being fine. Na-yoon addresses her father and requests wanting to see Jin-yoon at least once before she's discharged from the hospital. Seeing her fragile state, her father approves his daughter's request. Let's go back to the Jin-yoon's demise and explore what demon seeds are. Demons are supposed to be the most powerful entities in this world, more powerful than even the fiends or humans. They possess a unique yet terrifying ability to target humans and turn them into demonic seeds. The humans who have been marked demon seeds eventually go through a period of incubation, no different from a parasitical state where the parasite is feeding on its host. Before long, the demon seed completely takes over their body, turning that person into a fully transformed demon. This means Jin-yoon's condition is much worse than anticipated, and he's going to one day become a demon. The incubation period usually lasts for half a decade before the transformation kicks in, and it's been 4 years since the event happened, meaning Jin-yoon's condition is nearing his end and he'll soon become a demon. His little sister is on her way to see him in his room. As she enters his room, Hajin reflects that there's only one solution in these situations. Before the demon inside someone's body fully manifests and takes over the human, the only way to prevent a gruesome fate is to kill them. That's what Na-yoon intends to do as she stands before her brother's unconscious state, preparing herself to speak to him. At the same time, the author thinks that it's just going to be impossible, since no one seems like the candidate to pull it off. To kill Jin-yoon before he transforms into a monster. Not even a mercenary would agree to take on such a dangerous target, as Shin-hyuk is supposed to pass down his position to the next heir, Jin-yoon. The germination process also advances without any physical changes, effectively stopping intervention from outside. The biggest problem is, the demon lurking inside Jin-yoon will be way too strong and overwhelming for the story's main protagonist Kim Suho to handle. Hajin also believes that if actual heroes tried to stop a demonic Jin-yoon, many of their lives would be lost dealing with a powerful demon like that. In order to prevent that dark future from coming into existence, Hajin wants to do whatever it takes to stop Jin-yoon's germination, especially since the heroes are necessary in the future events to come. As Na-yoon sits before her brother's unconscious body, Hajin gets a chilling sensation and a crushing sense of defeat, because he has realized what he has to do in this situation. He has to be the one to commit the heinous act of taking a life, as it will prevent the darker future to come. Nayoon speaks to her brother, talking about the near-death incident she had in the monster attack today. She never fought a fiend so powerful before, and believed that any ordinary cadet wouldn't have been able to stop that monster. Annoying as it is to admit, Nayoon remembers Hajin being the sharpshooter who intervened and saved their lives. She ultimately decides against talking about him, and comes to learn that she has overstayed in her visiting hours. Nayoon decides to leave, hoping to return to her brother soon. But as she's leaving, Nayoon stops dead in her tracks, feeling a looming sense of dread coming up her brother. She had tried suppressing her memory, but there's no way she could forget about Hajin's words. With such cold eyes he said those words, which she interpreted as him bullying her in her state. Nayoon's eyes flare up in determination and anger, remembering what Hajin said. Let's go to the Tower of Heroes and see what Vice Captain Sunga is doing. She's out here viewing unauthorized documents on her own, risking her position and potentially getting in trouble. Sunga is interested in checking the records regarding the museum's attack, which is exactly what's concerning her assistant since she's doing something illegal. Anyway, Sunga learns from the investigation that many traces of light attribute magic were discovered from the body of the defeated demonic human, which also means that the people responsible for taking him down must have been capable of casting the attribute in the first place. The thoughts of a light attribute mana user sparking up from out of nowhere is exciting for the vice captain, since this type of hero would be an easy fight for the fiends. They're all dark attributes and light mana is their biggest weakness. Sunga wants to recruit this mysterious hero and can't wait to collect the new talent. Observing the footage files, Sunga vividly remembers there being only 3 cube cadets at the museum, which means only one of them must be a light attribute user. There's the obvious regarding Suho and Nayoon, since they're already active on the hunt for both of their talents. But the vice captain is most curious about the 3rd cadet, who they have yet to know about. To her shocking realization, the final cadet is none other than Kim Hajin, the same boy who bumped into her at the museum before leaving. Speaking of our boy, he's busy typing away at his laptop, kind of like me right now. The author expresses his new enlightenment. It turns out that no one in this world can visibly see the laptop he's working on, which is why he's easily capable of looking through the story's path, without really worrying about the other characters observing him. As soon as he came to learn about the invisible laptop, Hajin went the extra mile into adding another feature. Immediately his laptop alerts him about the changes in the story. In the training center, Rachel is giving Demian a really tough time. This chick has handed him nearly 20 L's back to back, to the point he's begging for someone to trade partners with him. The newest feature Hajin is related to detection and alteration. If something changes within 30 meters from the original story, Hajin will be sent an immediate alert, and this would further help him identify unusual situations in time. After all, he can't simply wait for the co-author's messages or rely on himself to detect everything detail by detail. Using this method, he has made sure to stay on top of any unexpected situations. But while our boy is happy about the feature, he certainly didn't expect a terrifying bloodlusted Nayoon popping up from behind. Distraught and angered, she requests a sparring match against our boy. Hajin stares at her and simply declines, as it wouldn't really benefit him to fight her. Nayoon calls him a coward for backing out and immediately points him blame for bringing up her family out of nowhere. The rest of the students wonder if a fight is about to break out. Hajin explains that he isn't participating because of his bullets, since they could deal her some serious injuries in a training session, and he doesn't want to be a part of that. Nayoon takes this comment as a mark of condescension, only getting infuriated at him more. The training instructor arrives just in time to interrupt their argument. He roars at Nayoon for trying to fight with the cadet Kim Hajin, especially because he's the only student without a training weapon. Considering the potential risks and injuries involved, Hajin is strictly prohibited from training with other students. Nayoon storms off in anger, leaving Hajin to realize that it may be far too late to issue an apology at this point. I mean, what he did was a stupid move as the author, but nothing can be done now. Hajin emphasizes that he has a different priority in mind, which is why he's been training like hell to get even stronger, as evident by the bruises on his hand. That priority is none other than killing Nayoon's older brother, which is also why apologizing to her seems like a fruitless case. If he gets close to her now, it's going to ruin everything between them later and cause Nayoon an even worse betrayal. The scene cuts from there and transitions to another club orientation. There are many students who have gathered here. The club president is Yoon Hyun, who leads the Verity Study Club. He outlines the main goal of their club, which is to conduct monster analysis and specialize in tactics research. Their goal is to meet together and engage in active discussions regarding monsters. While he's giving out the orientation speech, many students are simply charmed by his presence and allure. This charming character possesses a unique quality to capture everyone's attention without fail. But it's all a facade, and the only one who knows this is the author. Hajin internalizes that Hyun is using the power of a demon. He circles back to the first half of the story, which involves the institution cube as its center stage. Various events like cadet disappearances and monster invasions are supposed to occur at this level. And this guy Hyun, the leader of the club president, is actually a slick bastard who is manipulating events from behind the scenes. His looks are just deceiving. Hyun is responsible for forming a pact with the demon Lilith, and in exchange for earning her powers of enchantment, he became a fiend. Because of Hyun's true dark objectives, Hajin explains that he joined the study club for a reason. Among the cadets, Yeonha seems to also be unfazed by Hyun's charming appearance. The club president decides to showcase the students part of their usual routine and how they conduct analysis. A hologram of the upper intermediate monster called Monster Tyrant is brought up on stage. This monster first appeared right out of the explosive event that caused the invasion of towers and dungeons in their world. Until now, it has remained undefeated. Hyun highlights that any information regarding the higher tier monsters is critical and invaluable to the institution, since this helps them make plans to subjugate monsters. More so, by just acquiring information about a monster's vital points, they can sell it for billions. A playful Hyun decides to pick his target from the audience and asks Yeonha for her opinion regarding the creature's vital points. Yeonha counters that its vital points haven't even been discovered, and she's right. But Hyun still thinks her opinion would be valued, as that is what they do as a fun activity at the club. As his closing note, the club president invites them to attend the after-party to share their opinions regarding the creature's vital points. With the speech settled, Hajin comes to speak to Yeonha, asking if she's interested in going. In response, he's just casually ignored. Bro tries again, but this time shouts at her just to get her attention. Yeonha stops to confirm that she will attend the after-party as it might help her out with some information she could use. Figuring out her intentions, Hajin blurts out and asks if she's going to use that information to lead her future assault team in her guild. This remark catches Yeonha's attention. The Straits of Essence Guild is a powerhouse with its rich history. When the monsters first emerged from the gates 50 years ago, Yeonha's clan founded this guild, which is the reason it is one of the most influential guilds in the entire country. Hajin further impresses and shocks Yeonha with his sharp knowledge of her guild's dealings. In recent times, the vice guild master seems to be the highlight for the guild, to the point that he's threatening to take over the position of the successor in line, Yeonha herself. Hajin questions if that's her main goal, to attend the after-party and acquire information. Annoyed that he's still beating around the bush, Yeonha inquires about his intentions. Hajin surprisingly offers her the deal of her life. He's willing to throw in the mountain tyrant's weakness. His sudden offer swindles her and catches her off guard. Hajin thinks it's just necessary on his part, since Yeonha has to prove to her guild that she's really serious about her business and capable of leading the guild. Hajin explains that there's a small blue mark hidden on the monster's heel, and prioritizing the attack there will help immobilize the creature momentarily. He further adds that he's not so generous to hand this information for free, as he's looking to obtain something from Yeonha's guild, a prized weapon from their essential armory. His weapon of interest is the Desert Eagle. This man is pulling out all of the stops and going full American at this point. Yeonha asks to check if he's got any proof for the mountain tyrant's weakness, since he should have some notes or documentation backing his research. To this, he smiles and bluntly confesses that he doesn't. It's a ridiculous thing to admit and say out of nowhere without any research. Yeonha's face goes blank because she realizes that he is probably bullshitting her and wasting her time. She furiously storms off, but Hajin reminds her that she'll regret not using his advice if she thinks he's lying. There's the obvious issue that she might not end up taking his word seriously. But at the same time, if Yeonha really believes him, he'll have found himself a new ally. What's really funny is that Yeonha goes outside and contacts one of her guild's handlers. She issues a message for the assault team assigned to take down the mountain tyrant. Stuttering in shame, she tells her team to target the blue mark resting on the creature's heel, as it might be its vital point. This confirms that Yeonha used Hajin's advice on a whim, even if he didn't have any proof. Hajin reflects that he may have put in a wise investment because Yeonha is destined to become the king of Seoul someday. Kim Hajin faces off his worst villain to date, a loan payment invoice. That's right, playtime's over because this dude just got hit with 300 million won. The terror in his eyes is enough to tell you everything. This guy can't even fathom how much he owes. He's hit the upper limit for student loans off the bat. This makes Hajin just what kind of miserable things Chindung does in his life to require all of that money for himself. Well, his problems have become even greater. Hajin inspects his bank account's balance and realizes that he's left with 3 million to his name. That's a fraction of the amount he owes to the institution for borrowing so much money. At this rate, bro literally has no shot of going back to his real world. Instead, he's going to be stuck here doing jobs until the end of his life, just to pay off this humongous debt. Hajin scratches his head and realizes that he needs a job. which is a relatable feeling for some of you watching this video, I hope. Now, in this world, there are two ways to actually make some money, fast and big. The author explains that the first method is through stocks. Bro is out here trying to become the next Warren Buffett. But here's the thing though. Since the inception of towers and dungeons emerging all over the world right now, they are often sought and conquered by the guilds composed of heroes. Now, shares of those guilds are often listed on the stock market, allowing those shares to be traded throughout. Hajin's got the knowledge of all the guilds that are going to be listed. Once again, he's the author, so he knows this kind of stuff for no reason. The real issue is that he's got to acquire some level of capital to invest in the stocks, which means it's not going to be an immediate goal for now. The second option is the field, which Hajin believes is his only option for now. Field hunting is a unique way of earning money. The field in question is known to be a danger zone filled with monsters. Different from the typical towers and dungeon events, the fields have a large variety of monsters, which then you could hunt and earn a fortune from. It's kind of like quest hunting and then selling the corpses of the monsters you just hunted. However, the real obstacle in Hajin's case is really himself. His personal stats are shitty, barely better than the average male. So in his current state, his confidence is wavering, because he's unsure whether he could safely head into field hunting with his current skill set. The author reflects that it would normally be quite wasteful to extinguish his story points just to upgrade the training pistol he has. So he wants to find another way of upgrading his weapon or buffing his stats. Suddenly the door rings and a voice calls out for his name, alerting him that he's received a package from Cadet Yeonha. Remembering her name, Hajin wonders what this could mean, especially since Yeonha is an HTE type to engage with him. He opens the door to check things out anyway, and what he finds is a small box. The cadet opens the box only to be shocked by what he sees, and that's how the scene shifts to the Wonju field zone of the Gangwon province. Kim Hajin has made his way to his first field hunting event by traveling through the portals. Donning a rather clean outfit, Hajin receives best wishes from the receptionist and internalizes how cadets are well respected no matter where they go. He heads outside the portal station and into the Gangwon province. This part of the province is usually considered a low-danger area, and it quickly rose to fame and tourism from many adventurers traveling from other countries, earning them the province its newest moniker, the International Metropolis. One man shouts his request. He's looking for a party member specializing in magic so that he could enter Chiak Mountain. There's many people just like this guy, and Hajin calmly breezes through them observing what they're doing. He sees one of the employees confirming the defeat of 3 hobgoblins. Seeing this, Hajin realizes that it might be profitable for him to sell the monster loots using an agency as it would make the process smoother. He tries scouting for an agent around the area when suddenly one man calls him from behind. This man seems to have sensed Hajin's goal and asks if he wants to hunt monsters. The cadet confirms and learns that this nervous wreck is actually an agent. He shows his business card to prove his identity. Hajin wasn't expecting him to be so anxious, however. Suddenly, the author reads the name of the agency on the business card. It's led by Park Soo-hyuk. This guy is the big shot that will one day become Suho's personal agent one day, which means that while he may be nervous, he's certainly got the skills to recruit the best of the best. He will become the CEO of Korea's top leading agency eventually, and it's strange enough that Hajin is running into him so early in the story. Right now he's inexperienced and new, which is why Soo-hyuk is acting the way he does. Hajin takes special intrigue in their agency and forwards his hand. He's ready to have himself recruited by their agency. In his mind, Hajin knows this is just the start of the story. So many characters have yet to uncover their full potential and bloom into the characters they're supposed to be. He's basically investing in people right now by forming early connections. A sudden thought comes to his mind. Since this guy is supposed to be Suho's agent in the future, Hajin wonders if stealing him is really the right thing to do in this situation. A little while later, as they're making their way to the monster zone, Hajin asks if the agent is doing well on his own. We then see that this dude is just exhausted, like he's never done this much cardio in his life. He's probably at the verge of having a heart attack, which makes sense since cadets are physically stronger than agents who usually use vehicles to track them. As they approach the danger zone, the agent spots a bunch of hobgoblins' tracks. Hobgoblins aren't the hardest to beat, and a pair of them can lump nearly 400,000 won, so it's a good offer according to the agent. However, that kind of money is still not enough. Hajin reflects that only one of his mana bullets costs a whopping 200,000 won, which is way more expensive than he would like. So he's looking forward to earning something more than just striking down a bunch of goblins. Fixing his sights on a target, Hajin points to a boar monster just below the cliff and asks if hunting it would be fine. The agent immediately becomes worried since this is a steel boar, a monster that is known to be immune to bullets, as they're not strong or sharp enough to penetrate its skin. Hajin takes his words unseriously and happily goes ahead without a care in the world. In response, the agent is literally left speechless, since from his point of view, this is like signing your own death wish. Hajin emphasizes that he carries a pretty solid gun on him. Bro is literally saying his strap can put down anyone. More importantly, there's a reason he's so confident. Hajin just received a new gift from Yeonha in exchange for the precious information he traded. Lo and behold, this man pulls out the Desert Eagle in all of its glory. This beautifully lethal gun is further assisted with a brand new feature that he added by spending a few extra story points in the mix. The agent is against provoking the boar and warns our boy to be careful. But Hajin is pretty daring and doesn't give a damn. He locks in the target and releases a single explosive shot. That one shot literally cuts past the monster like a precise laser beam, putting it down in an instant. The sudden kill shot shocks the agent as he falls down in disbelief. The system informs him about the special feature that Hajin added. Every time he marks a kill with his weapon, its destructive power amplification is doubled. Do you know how insane that is? This man is going to become unstoppable with that ability. Hajin is quite satisfied with what he pulled off with his new weapon. Seeing Hajin's exceptional weapon as well as his shooting skills, the agent is left impressed. The boy has little time to accept the compliment and merely targets his next kill before releasing a powerful shot. The agent questions what he killed this time around. Hajin explains that he saw a black pelican from afar and decided to shoot it down. It's amazing to the agent that he can see this far with such accuracy, to the point he could shoot things in the air. Kim Hajin confirms with confidence in his abilities, playfully remarking that he possesses eagle eyes after all. He tells the agent that he'll go down the cliff to take care of the monsters. The agent runs after him in a hurry. With a black pelican down as well as a steel boar, they've acquired two heavy monsters back to back. Hajin asks if he's capable of safely transporting them back. Soo-hyuk explains that it would be rather convenient to pay the dispatch fee and call the logistics crew. He even calculates a budget for the amount they'll receive after taxes. Hajin is simultaneously impressed by his keen attention to detail, which will soon become the agent's reason for national fame. He shakes Hajin's hand in confidence and the two of them hope to work together, extending their partnership in the future. The agent recalls Hajin mentioning that it was his first experience in field hunting. From that, he wants to know how the boy is going to spend his money once he receives it. Like a true businessman, Hajin expresses that he's going to buy stocks, completely shattering the man's expectations with his answer. The fledgling guild called Packhorse Masters was originally founded by a demonic human or fiend. In the original story, they play a big role. Sitting at his laptop in his room, Hajin reflects that the guild isn't the thing that should be worrying him. It's rather the upcoming dungeon assault. In the main story, the Packhorse Masters Guild raid the Devil's Lair dungeon. Right after this raid, the stock prices of this guild go crazy out of the water, climbing up by nearly 1,000%. That's why he's happily investing his money in buying their stocks early so that he can reap the benefits of the boom later. It's the easiest and most efficient way to make money after all. Thanks to his foresight about the future. Spending 3 million won, he completes the purchase, and wonders if there's some other place he can find information regarding stocks. Hajin couldn't figure out much on the internet forums, so he thinks a sketchy website like the Violet Haze might be of some use to him instead. Come to think of it, Hajin remembers something. He remembers the masked syndicate, who became responsible for playing the part of the main villains in the second half of the story. Just like their name, they're a criminal organization without much information about its members. However, since he's the author of the novel, he knows their exact identities as well as their hideout. Hajin figures that he might be the only one in the world to know about them. While these guys are nasty criminals on their own, they still despise fiendish humans like they're even worse. Hajin wonders if he can strengthen his connection with the leader of the masked syndicate, which would somehow help him take down Chai Jin-yoon someday when he is resurrected as a demonic human. Figuring out his options, Hajin believes that there should be a vacancy in the organization, meaning he has a chance to act. As he's conducting his search, the laptop screen suddenly shuts off, surprising Kim Hajin as he draws his face near in worry. This is a terrible thing that's happened to him. The laptop was his only way of returning to his previous world. Losing it would set him back immensely. Fortunately, it turns back on, relieving him to some degree. 1 whole month has passed since he got into this world. The laptop is receiving a sudden update. Bro was hit with the Microsoft update and nearly collapsed, thinking he'd lose his work. Anyway, let's cut to another scene. At a restaurant, a couple is sitting by themselves, attracting the attention of the people. It's the disinterested Jong-hak and the delighted Yeonha. Jong-hak starts the talk expressing his annoyance. He doesn't want to take part in polite and noble meetings like this. Yeonha pokes fun at him and thinks he's only gaining benefits from partaking in this meeting. After all, he's talking to someone who is destined to lead society one day. She asks about his grades and learns that he's doing just okay. Yeonha mocks him for not pursuing first place. But the thing is, Jong-hak believes his grades are just okay specifically because he's in second place. Bro is winning but has really high standards for himself. Interrupting their meet and greet comes an unexpected guest. It's the dazzling Nayoon, Jong-hak's crush. This guy literally springs up from his chair and breaks his personality just to gain her attention. Seeing him jump up like that with so much interest turns Yeonha off, since she really likes him. Jungkook checks on Nayoon and asks if she's doing alright. Nayoon expresses that she was fine, but while their bickering is going on, Yeonha is getting irritated at being ignored. All of a sudden, Nayoon brings up Kim Hajin's name and catches Yeonha's attention. Yeonha turns to Nayoon and inquires about him. The girl explains that during the demonic human incident at the National Museum, there were only 3 cadets, and one of them just so happened to be Hajin. The demonic human got the better of them and crushed both Suho and Nayoon, so much so they couldn't beat him until one man stepped in the fight out of the blue. Kim Hajin annihilated the fiend's hand with his shot, and Nayoon was there to bear witness to the impossible event. She couldn't believe how he could pull that off with a training pistol, which leads her to wondering about his real motives. Yeonha is in deep thought when Nayoon decides to ask more about him. She wants to know what Yeonha thinks of the guy, especially since they were teamed up together in their first training. The girl flinches to respond. It turns out that she did a background check on Kim Hajin because of her own suspicions. She learned that he's just an orphan who joined the Cube and owes a staggering debt of 300 million. But apart from that basic information, it's not like she knows anything out of the blue about him. What's more, she can't figure out how he came to know about the Mountain Tyrant's vital point, something that not even the top researchers or analysts knew at the time. Yeonha remembers trying to ask him how he knew, but he was being a stubborn hard-ass about it and refused to elaborate. That's why she wanted to investigate him, because Yeonha thinks he's going to become a useful asset to the guild one day. Yeonha expresses that she first thought of him as an unremarkable person. She collects her thoughts and reasons that his attacks in the training round weren't nearly strong enough to take down an entire fiend's arm just like that. So based on that information, she deduces that he must be hiding a secret ace card that he keeps hidden from others. Nayoon whispers an interesting suggestion, that Kim Hajin might actually be a fiendish human himself. This suggestion coming from her baffles both Jungkook and Yeonha in place. Even the purple-haired brat has a hard time believing a fiend would kill another fiend just like that. Nayoon can't figure out what, but she knows that there's something weird going around Kim Hajin. Speaking of which, Hajin's laptop is acting weird and is close to reaching 100% update. Suddenly, he senses a warm sensation emerging from his wrist. The pain becomes sharper, and blood splotches begin appearing on his sleeve. Hajin panics as his wrist burns in painful sensations. The newest update is creating a stigma representing the creator's authority. Every time he increases his influence and the story point level evolves, his mark will evolve as well. The magic contained within the mark could be deployed whenever necessary, and after using it once, it will replenish back in 24 hours. Hajin experiences headaches and pains throughout his body. It's as if information is flooding inside his brain, and he's got no way of resisting it. Back at the restaurant, Jungkook slams his palm on the table, irritated to find Nayoon upset by Hajin's recent actions. During this time, Hajin can barely even stand and collapses to the ground. Jumping back to Nayoon, she can't help but remember those cruel words uttered by Kim Hajin. Nayoon confirms that she really doesn't like him at all. Hajin rests unconscious. His body gives up on him, and we see the stigma mark that he received from the latest update. The laptop receives a sudden notification for him. A new ability has been added to his observation and reading gift, enhancing its effects. Let's go to the Association Tower in Seoul. You see, right after the incident at the National Museum, Suho, Nayoon and Hajin were involved in the fight and received certificates of commendation for their amazing deed. Their efforts were recognized for their service to the city. Kim Hajin's wrist still throbs in pain from what happened yesterday. He's better now, but the pain is noteworthy. What's more, he's yet to figure out what its purpose is. Kim Hajin has the unfortunate encounter of sitting next to Nayoon, who is madly pissed at him and tells him to shut the hell up, even when he didn't say a damn word. Nayoon is so annoyed by his mere existence that she can't handle him next to her. Hajin curiously asks if she's yet to have forgotten something he did. Then he reminds her that on that very day, he also saved her damn life with his powers. Nayoon is a little frustrated to hear this coming from him, but it's not like he isn't speaking the truth. She lashes out at him, which invites Suho to stop their banter. He even offers Nayoon to switch seats to help her out. But this stubborn ass doesn't want to do that either. After a long argument, she manages to switch seats with Suho, who sits next to Hajin and prepares himself for a talk. He thanks Kim Hajin for saving their lives, something our boy clearly wasn't expecting them to admit. Suho confirms that without his intervention, they would have lost that fight, so he became their saving grace and earned their gratitude. But our boy is a chill guy. He thinks they could have won anyway even if he didn't intervene. See, if Hajin wasn't around to save their skin, it's likely that Suho would have pulled out his plot armor and evolved to a greater level of power just to take down the threat. That's the literal point of the protagonists in the story after all. Each time they're faced with danger, they always get back up and get stronger. The scene switches to the auditorium, where one of the most prominent heroes in the entire world is making his entrance. Donning long hair with a notable outfit filled with dragons, the man walks with a confident yet disinterested stride, commenting on how useless his current task is. This man is Yu Shihyuk, a top-tier hero considered ranked 37th in the association. In his dominant presence, the entire crowd is silent. Everyone can sense the strong aura emanating from him. This marks the beginning of the award ceremony, where Nayoon, Suho, and our boy Hajin are all awaiting. The awardees are called to step on the stage. These 3 cadets are selected for their honorable act in service of the city. The awards are granted by Shihyuk, one of the most notable heroes in the association, all for the sake of blessing the cadets for their brilliant act in exterminating a demonic threat and saving the lives of the innocents in the city. First, Shihyuk addresses Suho and hands him the reward. He sees promise in Suho's powers and comments that he's a talent worth recruiting. Suho is granted the honorable certificate just when Shihyuk makes a crazy offer to him. He wants the boy to forget the association totally and completely start working for him as a hunter for Forsaken Plains Guild. He reminds Suho that the role of a hero is just plain and boring, involving a ton of responsibility that Shihyuk himself doesn't value. However, the confident boy declined his offer, content with his choice to become a hero, despite those words. Shihyuk feels like he just had the fun reaped out of him and moves on to his next cadet. In the presence of Shihyuk, Nayoon seems to be flustered because he seems to recognize the girl. Turns out this dude is actually her master. Well, that's what Nayoon would like to believe because in truth, Shihyuk doesn't really find her a student at all. It's just that her father begged him to train her and that's how they got to this point. His disappointing yet blunt truth kills her enthusiasm and makes our boy happy because this bitch deserves to be humbled a little. And then comes the final cadet. Shihyuk seems to really like Hajin right off the bat, because he doesn't recognize this plain-looking kid at all. The first question he asks is who he is, because that's how insignificant and plain he seems. Hajin describes the situation by comparing it to indifference. It's as if his presence is being completely ignored because Shihyuk doesn't pay him any attention like the others. The award ceremony concluded just like that, as boring as that sounds. Cadet Nayoon is the first student to be asked about her thoughts after receiving her award. Well, after the ceremony, our boy is the happiest he has ever been. He's just received 15 whopping millions as the prize money for the fiend extermination. It's great because he's gonna need everything he's gotta cover that 300 million. He sits by himself and decides on how he'll invest the rest of the money. His interest is to buy more stocks from the guild. In the meantime, he's dying to inspect the new features his laptop received right after the painful update. Upon opening his laptop, he sees a message, notifying him about the updated functions. The first is the stigma mark he received. The second is the internet activation. The last one is the tome of truth added to his observation and reading skill. The stigma mark is related to what happened to his left arm, but there's almost little to no description provided on it. It just tells him he can use magic whenever needed. While it does say that, Hajin is having a difficult time figuring his way on activating his ability. Just as he's thinking about the activation, the mark forms a crest, signifying that it is about to activate. Scared that he might blow some shit up here, Hajin wants to take these risks back at the dorm where no one else can see him. It's going to be troublesome if someone spotted him after all. The second update is regarding internet activation. Hajin hovers his cursor over the button and clicks on it. After a brief pause, the screen redirects him to a bunch of different websites, like Law Abiding Spirit, Violent Haze, Jeremy's Sword, and some others. Not only is he getting free access to normal websites, he's also getting the restricted websites for free. Of all the websites he sees, the most important one is the Violet Haze, which has everything he needs. It's the most famous out of all the membership websites, serving as a place to trade critical information, weapons, rewards, requests, and much more. There's only a few heroes that don't use this website. Because of that, the government has decided to turn a blind eye to the trading of the underground. There's a crazy access fee that is necessary to be paid just to access this website. In our boy's case, all he needs to do is spend 200 of his precious story points. He does the purchase to create his account for the time being, and the moment he is thinking about connecting to a particular page, someone calls for him. It's the beautiful Sunga, and the vice captain has caught him. She knows that Hajin knows about her identity, and she also remembers how he is the only person who disappeared from the ceremony a while ago. She came here to especially hand him the card of their guild, the Holy Grace of God. This isn't just any deal, as even Hajin believes earning this card means a big accomplishment. Sunga has a bunch of important questions to ask him, so she sits down and wonders if he's willing to entertain her with them. Of course, Hajin already suspects that she's interested in scouting him potentially, so she sits down and asks if he's prepared to help her out with her questions. Normally, Sunga looks the most kind when represented in the media, but in reality, she possesses a different side to her. Even the best of the best talents are kicked around when it comes to her. She only cares about the best of the best and deals in absolutes, leaving behind anyone that is unnecessary and unimportant. That's the true personality of the Vice Guildmaster, Shunga. Forming a connection with her at this stage is going to be tantamount to Hajin's success in the future events to come. So that's why, before she even wants to speak to him, Bro just cuts her off and coldly states that he's got nothing new to tell her. After facing this rejection, Sunga tries her best to clarify things. She wants to tell him that she's the one expressing a key interest in him, and Shirley reminds him that she's the Vice Guildmaster of Korea's top guild. Hajin seems to acknowledge her position and ranking, but he's dismissive of it because he knows she came here for personal reasons. He knows for a fact that Sunga is only coming here because she reviewed the footage of him using the light attribute shot. It's not like she's genuinely interested in recruiting him right now. Instead, she wants to satiate her curiosity with a bunch of curious questions. That's why this dude is playing hard to get, to make himself seem like he's got everything going for him. This way, he's going to swindle her emotions and eventually receive her actual interest instead of the fickle curiosity she has right now. This man pulls out a power move and states that he's going to take his leave at once, shocking the heck out of Sunga. Back to reviewing his Stigma ability, more information about its use is provided. When his total story points exceed a threshold, then the attention score will increase by 1 level and another stroke will be added to his mark. It also makes it clear that Hajin can activate its power whenever he desires, and after using it once, it will be replenished in the time span of 24 hours. To test his newest ability, Hajin concentrates his focus on forming a dagger via his magic. All of a sudden, the mark forms him a mythical blade out of nowhere. The dagger is actually a real deal, as Hajin moves it around and feels like it's ready to be used at once. The thing about magic is that it's a stat influenced by one's innate talent and knowledge. Since Hajin popped inside of this world without any explanations about his background, he naturally assumed he wouldn't be capable of handling magic at all, but he's happy that he's found a way to use magic in his own way, through the Stigma's powers. The last thing he wants to try out is the Tome of Truth, which is supposed to enhance his pre-existing skills of observation and reading. Hajin thinks for a moment, and decides to call out the ability's name. The ability triggers his Stigma once more, materializing a book containing the truth. The mystical energy of the book allows Hajin the ability to answer any question, as long as it is within the scope of its magic. Now how crazy is that? Even the author stops for a second to digest what he just read. To check if it's bullshitting him or not, he asks about his height. Turns out our boy is a short king standing at 174 centimeters, or just over 5 foot 8 inches in freedom units. Using the Tome of Book consumes 1 story point for every question as a cost. Suddenly, Hajin's smartwatch beeps crazily, calling for a sudden emergency alert from the school. There's a group message coming from someone who is asking for a student's location. Seeing this red emergency notice, our boy wonders what it's about. He thinks it may have triggered the second major event that is supposed to occur in the main storyline, the serial disappearances of the cadets at the Cube. This episode will involve the disappearance of 6 cadets from out of nowhere. The culprit responsible for the act is meticulous in covering their tracks, and doesn't leave a single trace behind. The investigations are all useless, causing the number to only increase, as if they are all trapped in an endless game. Hajin remarks that this episode is important, because the perpetrator's final target is supposed to be none other than Yu Yeonha herself. Now, even Hajin knows that things would be troublesome for him if the co-author interfered in this part of the story and edited in some changes, since they could threaten to just remove one of the main characters like at the museum incident. Our boy takes matters into his own hands to catch the criminal, but thinks that even that would be proven fruitless, since his needless interference will disrupt the course of the story forever. All he can do for the meantime is simply wait and observe for the story to go down. The scene switches to the training center the next day. Suho is replenishing himself with water when one of his friends points to the scene just up ahead. While Hajin is attempting to work out and enhancing his physical strength, a bunch of annoying bullies come to tease him and disrupt his workout. They call him a loser for being unable to lift a simple weight, despite being enrolled at the prestigious institution. They even suspect that he must have bribed his way inside. Suho tries to help him out since he has a strong sense of justice, but his friend grabs him and pulls him away. Suho can't believe that the class rep Young-hun isn't doing anything to stop those guys, but Young-hun explains that it's clear from those delinquents that Hajin somehow got on the bad side of Jong-hak, which is why any involvement will label Suho a target as well. There's also a possibility that these guys are faking to test his reaction. Suho can't believe what he's hearing, but Young-hun thinks that a dude who shattered the demonic human's arm couldn't be afraid of dealing with a bunch of amateurs all by himself. He's of the opinion that Hajin deliberately hides his true strength, but this theory is proven ridiculous pretty quickly, because our boy cannot for the life of him lift that barbell. He's just struggling out here before giving up. Even the losers think that he's just pathetic. Young-hun is starting to believe that luck may have been on his side. This fake-ass switched sides so quickly. Anyway, Suho ignores him and rushes to save Hajin anyway. The rest of the cadets quickly realize that a fight is about to break out, and Nayun is eavesdropping too. Once again, their instructor comes out roaring like an angry dad. He's pissed that they're making a mockery out of their training session. The instructor tells the students to gather around for their scores for the quiz to be revealed. The sheet will be put on the wall so everyone can view the results in groups. The cadets come around checking the board and realize that a ton of them were annihilated in the quiz. In that very same quiz, only one student's name is at the top. It's none other than Kim Hajin, the same annoying cunt who couldn't even lift a simple barbell earlier. Rachel and Jonghyuk are respectively second and third. I mean, Hajin isn't surprised by this outcome, since he practically knows about everything in the story he authored himself. Seeing his result, a girl's rapier drops on the ground. This is Rachel, and she's utterly speechless by what she sees. She's the British princess who ranked third in the admissions. There's only one notable detail about this girl's character, and that is the fact that she never places second in any given written test, no matter what. So the fact that she's just scored second has winded her. She stares at him as if she's seen a ghost of some kind. Hajin is stunned too, not knowing what to say. Let's explore what happened back when Rachel first got accepted into the cube with her brilliant result. Her attendants were all worried for her, that she might be taking part and standing next to one of the world's best hero candidates very soon. What's more, she'll have no one to relate to as everyone in her class would be Korean. Rachel was okay with that, never feeling a sense of anxiety, and simply wanted to live up to the expectations of others, for the sake of the royal family. But today, she has felt a sense of dread, defeat, and disappointment, unlike any other. She feels like she has failed her countrymen with her performance. The teacher reviews Hajin's notes in class, specifically pointing out the boy's brilliance in writing a new take on phenomenological analysis. He's even given a special mention to be followed as an academic weapon. Now, Rachel knows that the subject of phenomenology isn't just any easy subject to master. She doesn't even think it's possible for her to close their gap before midterms come around. This aloof and lost boy Kim Hajin is finessing her, when he doesn't even pay any attention to his lectures. Burning with inspiration and an aching desire to know how he studies, Rachel takes a wider interest in him. At the information office, our boy is digging up a bunch of his queries. He's finally acquired the Tome of Truth to answer all his problems, so it should help him out. Thanks to this new shiny ability, he can learn about anything in this world, or whatever gaps of knowledge he has at the cost of spending just a bunch of his story points, especially since he has nothing going for him right now and wouldn't really make a profit. Hajin is hoping for things to get better eventually. He goes to complete agent registration, and from here, he wants to use some of his precious story points to take care of the rest. Let's talk about the second major event that's going to happen in the story. Right after it happens, the institution's position as a place of security and authority is put under fire by the people. It is no longer considered a safe zone. The thing is, even with his current powers, Hajin believes he's too weak to solo a fiend all by himself. However, he has been getting a shit ton of story points after Jonghyuk got annoyed with him and sent his little goons. That's turning into his benefit and working things out for the guy. Hajin wants to spend some of the points to ensure his survival for the things to come in the future. The first area of interest is increasing his weapon buffs. Since he has the Desert Eagle handgun with him, he wants to add a convertible function to the gun, allowing it to become a sniper rifle. Now, I don't know about you, but a handgun transforming into a sniper rifle just sounds cool as fuck. Hajin wonders if he's doing a little overkill with this feature, but he still ultimately makes the decision by spending 250 story points for the added feature. Right that moment, his gun warps and takes the form of a beautiful gold sniper rifle, reflecting its changes. Even Hajin is impressed by the skill, but he thinks it's too flashy for a gun and will draw a lot of attention, so he reverts it back to its handgun state for now. Next, his focus is to create a technique that's going to help him out. He has 3 slots to work things out. What differentiates the supernatural and magic-based powers called abilities from techniques is that they're considered honed physical skills that are acquired instead of given. Arguably the most important skill for a ranged weapon user's survival to prioritize any successful elimination is positioning themselves in top advantage. So right now, the technique Hajin is hoping to acquire is related to getting him the ideal position for him to avoid any mishaps in the future. He types away at his laptop, auditing the E-Technique's skills. At last, the technique's properties are there for him to use. It's a skill he decided to call parkour, and it helps with helping him become an agile monster throughout the field. This will ensure that he keeps moving and doesn't stay stuck in one place to expose his position. For this effect, 350 points have been consumed. But strangely, our boy doesn't seem to feel anything different from his body. He's at least confident that he scored some changes, although he doesn't feel them. Suddenly his smartwatch receives a notification. It's a group message, and this time, people are looking for Sung Yan, the girl who has become the second victim of the perpetrator from within the institution. Hajin explains that the students who disappeared before Yeonha were actually murdered by the culprit in cold blood. This means the moment they disappear, they're as good as gone. Since he's the author, he knows about this dangerous, mysterious villain acting from behind the scenes. He also knows the persons that will be involved in the disappearance. Faced with this morally gray situation, Hajin wonders if he should really be turning a blind eye to what's happening right now for the sake of the story and his personal benefit. That's an interesting question though. Tell me what you guys would have done in the comments below. Would you be pragmatic or ethical? These kinds of thoughts are weighing heavy on the author who is trapped in a tough situation with no right answers. The scene shifts to the outdoor training ground under the cube's premises. The instructor leads the announcement for each cadet and explains that they're going to be part of a special practical training session. The cave they see just up ahead is actually called an artificial dungeon, and it was created thanks to the magical wonders of magic tech. This place is inhabited by illusions of the real monsters, so in a way, it's the best form of training possible to train the cadets to fight against real monsters in the future. That's why the cadets will be participating in a mock dungeon assault mission today. However, the instructor intently reminds them that they shouldn't take the exercise lightly just because it's training, or it may come at a cost to them. The thing about the artificial dungeon is that it's immense in size, which is why the two groups called Veritas and Cultural will work together in order to effectively dismantle it. One team from each unit will merge to form an assault team to tackle the dungeon. The instructor tells them to make their own teams from here on out. There's countless chatter of the students trying to link up and communicate with each other so they could form teams. Among them is also Team 8, consisting of our boy Hajin and the rest of his allies like Yeonha, Hazuki, and Hosung. From the cultural unit, they have Jaden, Jingyu, Sujung, and Jinsha, making it a team consisting of 8 cadets total. In the artificial dungeon, there are many terrifying traps waiting for them. Some of these traps were deliberately planted by the fiends, which is at least Hajin suspects. To tackle the possibility of dealing with demonic humans, he's already prepared a bunch of special bullets for them beforehand. But even at this level, Hajin is confident in himself and wonders if he's going to survive this practical training event. Suddenly, the system begins roaring out a warning informing him about the discrepancy caused in the story. This is troublesome for the author, especially since he won't know what those changes are. The worst part is, 3 aspects of the story have been altered in one event, so it's definitely cautioning Hajin, who doesn't know what's going on, or who's causing such alterations to occur. As the teams are gathering up, Hajin's biggest worry is that he doesn't know about the changes, while he's completely lost in thought. Kim Soo-ho's teammate, Yuna from the culture unit, mocks him for being a dumbass and not paying attention to the instructor. The system informs him about Yuna's temper rising. At the same time, Yeonha gets to meet Jaden from the cultural team, but she doesn't share the dude's enthusiasm and has a dead look on her face. The system informs that Jaden's growth potential has also increased based on this interaction. Then lastly, Nayun interacts with a specific cadet that she's seen around at the hunting club. The cadet introduces himself as Sven, donning a beautiful pair of blue eyes and a charming smile. He's paired up with her, but for some reason, his mental breakdown is only worsening, which also means he is highly susceptible to become a demon puppet during the raid. Hajin is just baffled listening to these story changes popping up from out of nowhere, and he is deeply troubled since they're going to impact the story to a significant amount. The author fixates his attention on the 2 characters that he has to keep a sharp eye on. The first of them is Jaden from Team 8. Since he's supposed to be a delinquent-type character with a personality of a bully, while he possesses the qualities of a fine cadet, what's really bothering Hajin are the growth potential points he's receiving from out of nowhere. Jaden politely introduces the rest of his team, those being Jingyu, Sujun, and Jinsha. From Yeonha's side, she does the same, but she tends to misremember our boy's name, causing him annoyance. It's funny because I think she called him Lee Hajin just to fuck with him. Back to his thoughts, Hajin focuses on what he should do regarding his second topic of interest, Sven. This dude is actually on a government scholarship since he's considered an elite candidate hero from Germany. There's only one detail to note about this guy, and it's the fact that he's got the hots for Nayun. Is it me or does everybody just like Nayun? Someone needs to check if she made a contract with the Demon of Enchantment. Anyway, like the rest of the international students inside the institution, Sven came with the purpose of attaining glory and reaching the very heights of success. But that remains to be an unfulfilled dream for him, especially when talents like Nayun, Suho, and even Yeonha are in the picture as the main characters. Seeing their monstrous and brilliant abilities, Sven became lost and mentally torn. He had never felt true inferiority and humbling defeat before coming to the institution. His insecurities got the better of him, which is why in his mad pursuit for power, Sven sells his soul in exchange for ultimate strength. Well, those are the details the author wrote that he's confident about. The real problem is that his transformation is going to happen during the raid. It has moved forward in the timeline, and while he's hoping it doesn't have much of an impact, Hajin is still worried. His thoughts are crushed by Jaden's sudden greeting, who squeezes his shoulder and reminds him not to get lost in his thoughts. Hajin snaps away his arm to push him off. Jaden is too quick to denote him as a scumbag and thinks the rumors about him must all be true. Hearing those words, Hajin internalizes that his reputation is at an all-time low right now. A particular rumor has taken effect in the Orbis unit, causing many people to set their sights on him. The rumors are that he's using his status as a cadet to intimidate other people. But it's one of those rumors that are manufactured from out of nowhere to talk shit about a person. It's pretty clear who made the rumors though, since Hajin knows it's definitely related to Jonghak and his lackeys. Seeing his so-called friends, Hajin is a little upset that Hazuki and Hoseung aren't even stepping in to help him out here despite being a team. Anyway, the order of the teams is decided, and they'll start entering from Team 1. In the meanwhile, Jaden tries to chat up Yeonha in any attempts of rizzing her. He goes on talking on and on about how their teams are a mix-up of being overpowered right now. They even shit-talk Hajin for being a dead weight, which is just funny. It's like all the haters gathered in one team and their victim is poor Hajin. At last, it's time for Team 8 to enter the dungeon. They pull up inside, seeing the artificial cave in all its glory. They walk together and explore the dungeon with Jaden being the most confident ahead. Suddenly, they find a place with many paths. A curious Yeonha wonders which path will be the most effective to take. Jaden explains that they always have Jin Yu as a ranged weapons user to rely on. Hajin breaks his silence and suggests exploring route number 6 out of the blue. His sudden interruption annoys Jaden a lot, but strangely, Yeonha seems to trust his gut and actually accepts his suggestion. Her sudden approval surprises Hajin, and while she calls him useless in front of the group, she can't help but admit that he's got a good pair of eyes on him. Hajin is a little upset that she has to drag his name through the mud just to give him a compliment. He's okay with it as long as they can meet Nayoon down the same route. The thing about Sven is that he might really end up making a pact with the demon lurking inside the cave. That's why the burden will fall on Nayoon, and she's going to have a tough time dealing with him alone. If she falls right now, the rest of the story will be in shambles since her character is crucial to forwarding the plot. She's an invaluable piece that can't be lost. They enter Path 6, but Jaden is still a jealous bitch who calls Hajin an attention seeker. Our boy doesn't care about his insults and simply chooses to focus on the monsters ahead. The rest of the cadets can't see a thing in the dark, but Hajin seems to be fine with spotting a salamander in the near distance. He also thinks it might be some kind of dungeon switch, which could reveal some properties about the dungeon. Worried, Jing Yu thinks he should try shooting a light arrow and check things out for them. With Yeonha's approval, he prepares a shot and releases it, carving a path of light just ahead. To everyone's shock, there is indeed a salamander monster up ahead. Jaden is shocked while Yeonha alerts everyone to get into battle position to strike this bitch down. Hajin, on the other hand, is anticipating something before making his move. Yeonha brings out her signature whip weapon and takes on the battle head-on. She unleashes her strong whip aimed at the beast, interrupting it, charging an attack from its mouth. I'm not going to lie, this dude looks like a Pokemon. With its mouth restricted, Hazuki and the other melee fighters pounce in to crush the monster with their powerful attacks. Since it's only a hologram, they defeat it rather easily, suffering little to no consequences from the fight. Yeonha hears the rumbling sound and realizes that the dungeon is transforming after the monster's defeat. The electric charge coming from her whip is observed by Hajin, who is impressed that she has already awakened her Eve of Awakening power. Just as they're about to move, Hajin trips on a pebble and crashes on top of Yeonha from behind. At the same time, a sharp projectile swiftly misses them by the mark, which would have hit if he didn't stumble just now. Both of them hit the ground in a hard crash. Hajin's face is sweating bullets because he knows he's dead now. Yeonha tries to ignore his bullshit act and tries to ignore him for a moment, but then she gets fired up and wants to beat him up. As she's preparing to beat him down, the rest of their teammates point to the arrow that nearly killed them just now. It's during this moment that Hajin realizes that when they stumbled just now, they actually avoided a lethal poison arrow. The scene cuts to Sven, who has been injured by one of such arrows, and begs Nayoon to leave him behind. Carrying his heavy-ass weight, Nayoon shouts at him to shut up if he can't run. She still can't believe what happened earlier. An arrow from out of nowhere came flying and hit Sven from behind. She couldn't believe that it was a part of their training, so she made a run for it. Especially since this is an artificial dungeon where situations like these aren't supposed to happen. Now let's explore the giant-ass demon she's trying to escape from. This lava golem is a mini Godzilla that's chasing after Nayoon. No wonder she's pissed at Sven for yapping shit while being injured. The artificial cave has its training underway for the cadets. They're busy fighting the fire salamanders shooting beams from their mouths. Hajin's team is defending against them pretty well, especially the cultural unit. They defend and counterattack with long-ranged weapons. The same goes for Hajin and Yeonha, who are swiftly cleaning up the mess with ease. Jaden is having fun slicing down on the monsters on his own. This back-to-back fight seems to be an easy victory for our heroes. they haven't faced a really difficult monster so far since they're nothing more than fodder. Apart from the poisonous arrow, they don't think they have encountered any traps to watch out for, so they're fine with pushing in and exploring deeper. But something about the poisonous arrow does not sit right with the author. He even received a notification about it from the system. He can't believe that these idiots still think the arrow is just a part of training and not an actual threat. Hajin is riddled with so many thoughts, when suddenly, a strong creeping presence from behind terrifies him. A fully charged salamander is preparing its devastating fire beam, ready to launch at any moment. Hajin is utterly shocked that one of the salamanders survived and wasn't dead after they made sure it was down. The enormous fire blast is released in their path, with Yanha and the others standing defenseless. This one attack could annihilate all of them. This is why Hajin intervenes in the battle with his stigma magic, releasing his one-time use ability to cast a water barrier at once. The stigma magic releases the water barrier, protecting them from the beam's wrath. The beam is powerful, but eventually it fades against the defensive properties of the water barrier, engulfing their team. Finishing up its attack, the salamander crashes as it was its final resort. But what Hajin pulled off just now has shocked the eyeballs of his teammates. Hazuki and Hosung just don't know what they saw just now. They also couldn't believe that the attack from the salamander is so powerful and a part of training. It's the real flame breath at full strength, and while it didn't fully connect with the heroes, it was dangerous. Jaden is the only one enraged from the incident, and immediately grapples Hajin for hiding his water attribute powers, especially since they needed them a while ago. Hajin tries to play it calm and explains that he's just using an effect of a magic item. But Jaden isn't going to buy his excuse. Yanha pulls in to break them off. What's troubling them is the fact that they faced a real monster in an artificial dungeon. Yanha reasons that the place is supposed to mimic a traditional or normal dungeon, which means it's likely that one of the salamanders evolved in some way, or something else caused it to pop up. She doesn't want to focus on the details of that for now, because she's confident they'll receive points for taking out a real monster later. Yanha leads the group and acts like she doesn't really care about what happened. But in her thoughts, she is much too confident that Hajin is bullshitting about the magic item excuse. The fact that he couldn't afford the Desert Eagle is proof enough that he couldn't get his hands on a magic item out of nowhere. What's more is that it's specifically a water attribute magic, and while Jonghak and Suho seem like candidates to pull that kind of shit off, a guy like Hajin is just out of the question. Yana connects the weird coincidences involving him so far, such as the Mountain Tyrant's vital point, and the fact that he's capable of using magic. She can't figure out why he's going through so much to hide his powers, which reminds her of Nayun's initial assumption that he's probably a fiendish human, because of her puzzled thoughts and her inability to trust Hajin. Yanha has kept a close eye on him. Let's run it back to our girl Nayun and see how she's facing her monster. The Maga Megalith is a real threat. An intermediate grade monster that seems unstoppable. They think it's a dungeon boss and even wonder if it's possible to deal with such a monstrosity, especially with a normal team. Their plan is to join forces with the other teams and lead a joint attack. There's the concern that Sven's condition is fragile too. Nayun is stumped about the poisonous arrow darting from out of nowhere. She's starting to believe the dungeon is way too challenging for a cadet level's training. Sven's condition is shown to be worse than what everyone believes. He feels like the burden of the group for letting everyone down. And with this, his mental condition worsens. He has troublesome thoughts and comes to question his abilities. It tortures him from the inside, until one voice decides to take advantage of his crippled state. The voice asks if he's seeking strength, especially since he suffered so much throughout this time. This voice promises to give him exactly what he wants, by offering him the strength of his dreams. In exchange, this demonic voice requests that he surrender everything else. Faced with this offer, and in his pitiful state, Sven gleefully accepts the offer without thinking about anything else. Just as he accepts the offer, the demonic fiend captures his soul in its trap, causing him whirling pain. He shouts in agony as his body succumbs to pain. Nayun rushes to him and requests her partymate's attention, but all of his screaming has actually drawn their ugly old Goliath to this location. He stares at them for a casual hello before obliterating the place with its lava. The monster sways its giant fist to crush the structures. The cadets are probably performing athletic-level sprints here because they're so afraid a damn fist will crush them if they're not fast enough. The monster slams the place down, sending some of the cadets flying in place. They're stuck with practically no way out. Even Nayun has hit a hard wall just carrying Sven and can't see a way out. Before she can even recover her breath, the horrifying creature pops up with its scary eyes. Now that's a nightmare right there. No one would want to be Nayun right now. The girl can't believe what they're facing and is now convinced that this isn't a dummy. Faced against its wrath, Nayun is terrified to admit that they might just die in a place like this, an artificial dungeon. The monster prepares to unleash its attack when one mana bullet comes flying from out of nowhere, striking the monster down and penetrating the top of its head. Nayoon turns her attention to the shooter who attacked the monster from afar. It's none other than our boy Hajin, who has saved her ass a second time. If she's still ungrateful after this, I swear he better leave her to die. Let's go back a few minutes and see what happened between Yeonha's team. They ended up hitting a massive wall, annoying Jaden because this path was supposed to lead them to the dungeon's boss monster. Hajin confirms that they're still at the right place. In fact, they've never been closer. But he himself didn't anticipate the wall just ahead. Instead of fixating on the details of that, Hajin claimed that the monster is lurking right behind. He wanted the group to try and break the wall for him. Jaden was pissed that he's the one taking charge of the operations and running the show. Anyway, he still attacks with the full force of his sword. The result? Poor guy experiences a sharp shock because the wall has been infused with strong defensive capabilities, so even an attack infused with magic is fruitless against it. Hazuki notices something and points to the gap just above the wall. Hajin believes they could use the gap to cross over the place, but Jaden thinks it's a ridiculous idea, and that he's crazy for thinking he could make it out of a 10-meter climb. Realizing that Jaden's a fool who probably can't do what he's about to pull off, Hajin decides to go first. He uses his parkour technique, strengthening his grip and making him so agile that he turns and tosses his way up, lunging like an expert until he reaches the top. From there, he avoids the group and just dashes away. Right then, the entire group hears a sudden boom coming from the other side. The dungeon is once again experiencing a sudden, unexpected change. Jaden doesn't know what's going on, but what they don't know is that the giant lava golem has been wreaking havoc. Inside, Hajin comes to rescue Nayoon. He's pleasantly surprised that the stun properties of his shot just wore off and didn't last very long against this creature of bulldozing size. He calls for Nayoon to run away while she still can instead of sitting idle. Things get worse for our boy since the towering monster just so happens to have found its newest target. Bro's face turns pale as he begs Nayoon to save him now instead of running her ass away. Instantly, the group assumes battle formation and strikes the lava golem from many angles. But despite their heavy blows, none of the hits work against this beast as it stands impenetrable as ever. Seeing them come to their rescue, Nayoon is glad and decides to get down to business as she readies a powerful arrow shot. She wants them to keep the monster distracted while she prepares her shot. A few more moments pass, and eventually Sven shows up from out of nowhere with his surprise entrance. He keeps the monster busy and distracted, allowing Nayoon to wind up more of her strength. Remembering the outcome against the demonic human from last time, she swears that this time things will turn out differently. And then, Nayoon releases her obliterating arrow which utterly annihilates the monster's face upon impact. The golem's corpse hits the ground as lava melts out of its head. The cadets can't believe that they were able to defeat such a ferocious monster with their combined strengths. Some of them are hoping they're getting rewarded with a good amount of points. Nayeon and Sven also catch up with them. The rest of them are shocked by Nayoon's sudden attack, and she calls it her finishing move. Hajin is disinterested about the rest, and fixates his attention on Sven, who has yet to transform into a fiend at this level. It's an alteration from the original story which is certain to cause future changes. The transformation will occur no matter what, especially since he has made a pact with the demon in this cave. Now it's going to be tough because there's no telling when he'll act up against the group and make the story chaotic. Nayoon's attention drifts away at the boy in the distance, who is catching his breath. She takes a moment to forget about her anger towards him and comes to talk with him in private. Knowing that she owes him a bit, Nayoon tries to utter the words thank you, feeling embarrassed about saying them too. Earning her acceptance is actually a radiant experience for our boy, who can't wonder what the fuck just happened. He spaces out and questions what she said, causing her annoyance as she confirms that she won't say it again for him. What Hajin can't believe is that she actually went ahead and thanked him like this. Her entire life has been riddled with nothing but tragedy. The very first tragedy trailing her life occurred when she turned 6. It was tough for the poor girl to lose her mother at the hands of a fiend, which strengthened her resolve to one day become a hero. Normally, kids were taught to have fun and laugh, but Nayoon was different. She was filled with anger and abused her body to its utmost limits from a young age. She was shut off and couldn't build meaningful connections, because that would risk her being vulnerable and being open to others about her past. As a consequence, only a handful of people have earned her gratitude, and there's barely any who can confidently call her a friend. That's why this moment is so special to Hajin, because the character he wrote to only say sorry finally said something completely contradicting herself. He knew it better than anyone else as the author of the novel. Nayoon goes on a tangent and questions why he's letting Junghook's goons annoy him when he's so strong and capable in real situations. After all, just one shot from his gun was able to stun the monster in place. There's just no way the goons are a match for a guy like him, so she doesn't get his intentions. Hajin expresses that he doesn't really have a way to beat them truly. It's strange to Nayoon, who has seen him beat a monster with his weapon. The boy demonstrates his new gun, the Desert Eagle, and explains that it's just a custom-made craft which helps take care of things for him. All in all, he's trying to avoid looking like a strong guy. Nayoon goes crazy hearing him admit to a crime so openly. Modified weapons are actually illegal in the institution and would cause an immediate suspension. Hajin confirms that it's the only reason he uses the weapon when he truly needs it. Thankfully, he's found a way to hide this gun inside the stigma mark, allowing him to keep stronger weapons tucked inside his inventory without getting suspended every time. However, Nayoon is still not buying his excuse, seeing how strong he is. That's when she curiously questions if he possesses some kind of gift related to his firearm skills. Hajin doesn't give her a proper response, but she's pretty content and leaves. She isn't going to rat him out for using the gun, but recommends he stop using it. Before leaving, she stops to touch another topic, the same topic that spiraled her hatred towards him. Hajin grows silent for a moment, and still refuses to apologize or clarify. He doesn't want to apologize and earn her a connection, since she will forgive him, which is really bad for what's going to happen in the future.